Welcome. The day is done. It is time now to let the noise of your world fade into silence. Find your most comfortable position, and for the next few moments, simply relax. Tonight's Odyssey is about to begin, but this is not a story of luxury. This is a story of burdens. This is Rome. Tonight, you will not just learn about one of its greatest emperors, you will become him. From the gilded halls of the Palatine Hill, to the frozen battlefields of the Danube, to the depths of your own soul, you will live the life of the Whether you are here for a story to captivate your mind, or a grand narrative to accompany you to sleep, your journey starts now. If you enjoy these odysseys, subscribe and join us every time we travel to the past. Now, let us begin. Giù ar cold. The cold is the first thing you notice every morning when you wake in this wretched place, and it will be the last thing you feel before sleep takes you tonight. The cold of the north is not like the gentle winter chill of Rome, where braziers warm marble halls and slaves bring heated wine. This is a cold that seeps into your bones, that makes your joints ache with every movement, that turns your breath into white clouds that hang in the stale air of your command tent, like the ghosts of words better left unspoken. You are Marcus Aurelius, Antoninus Augustus, Emperor of Rome, master of the known world, and you are sitting in the mud beside the Danube River in the year of Rome's founding 920. By the Christian reckoning that some of your subjects whisper about in secret, it is the year 172, after the birth of their prophet. You have been on this God's-forsaken frontier for 3 years now. 3 years of cold, 3 years of blood, 3 years of a war that seems to have no end. The tent around you is modest by the standards of imperial accommodation. Canvas walls, stained with mildew and smoke, a folding camp bed with thin woolen blankets, a brazier that does almost nothing to push back the penetrating damp, a small wooden desk, scarred and weathered, where you sit now by the light of oil lamps that sputter and smoke. On this desk are the instruments of your double life. On one side, maps of Germania, reports from scouts, dispatches from legion commanders, detailing troop movements and enemy positions. On the other side, a simple bound notebook, its pages filled with your own cramped Greek handwriting, your private thoughts, your philosophical refuge, what will later be known as the Meditations, though you have no such grand name for it. To you, it is simply your conversation with yourself, your attempt to make sense of a world that seems determined to test every principle you hold dear. You hear the sounds of the camp awakening outside, the distant clang of a smith's hammer on metal, the rough voices of soldiers, speaking in the coarse Latin of the legions, punctuated by curses you pretend not to understand, the snorting of horses in their paddocks, the creak of wagon wheels in frozen ruts. Somewhere, a man is coughing, a deep, rattling sound that goes on until it ends in retching. The plague has followed you even here, to the ends of the empire. Death respects no borders. You look down at what you wrote last night, before exhaustion finally claimed you. The words seem almost mocking now in the grey light of dawn filtering through the tent flap. You have written, "Consider that before long you will be nobody and nowhere, nor will any of the things exist that you now see, nor any of those who are now living. For all things are formed by nature to change and be turned and to perish, in order that other things in continuous succession may exist." Noble words, true words, the words of a philosopher who understands the impermanence of all things. But they were written by a man whose hands still smelled of the incense from yesterday's sacrifice, where you stood before your assembled legions and prayed to Jupiter and Mars for victory, where you promised your soldiers, men who will die at your command, that the gods favor Rome and that their blood will purchase glory. The contradiction does not escape you. It never does. You're a man who believes that death is natural and nothing to fear, yet you send thousands to die. You are a man who writes that external things cannot touch the soul, yet you are consumed by anxiety over rebellious tribes and plague-ravaged cities. You are a philosopher who must be a warlord. You are a seeker of tranquility commanding an empire built on violence. The irony is sharp enough to draw blood. You stand, feeling the protest in your knees, the stiffness in your back. You are 51 years old, though you feel ancient. The purple cloak of your rank hangs from a wooden peg, looking incongruous in this Spartan setting. You are expected to wear it today. You are expected to look like an emperor, like a god made flesh, even here in the mud, especially here in the mud. The soldiers need to see you as something more than mortal, even though you know, with the certainty that your philosophy has given you, that you are nothing more than a man who will die, whose body will rot and return to the earth, just like theirs, whose thoughts will cease and whose empire will crumble into dust. You pour water from a bronze ewer into a basin. The water is so cold it makes your hands ache. You wash your face, the shock of it bringing a clarity you are not sure you want. Through the thin canvas walls, you can hear your bodyguards taking their positions. Praetorians, the elite soldiers who stand between you and assassination. You wonder sometimes if they would die for you, or if they simply die for the idea of the emperor, for the office, rather than the man. You suppose it does not matter. The result is the same. You dress methodically, the simple tunic first, then the leather and metal of your cuirass, your armor. It is functional rather than decorative, though the metalworkers have inscribed it with scenes of victory and the favor of the gods. You have never liked the weight of it, the restriction of movement, but it is necessary, not for protection from Germanic spears, but for the performance. You must look the part, you must be the emperor they expect to see. The man who writes in his private notebook that titles and honors are meaningless must wear the costume of supreme power. There is a respectful cough outside your tent. A voice, careful and deferential, announces that your senior officers await your pleasure, as if anything that happens in this place could bring pleasure. You call for them to enter. They file in, a parade of weathered faces and scarred hands. These are not the perfumed senators of Rome, the politicians who have never seen battle. These are career soldiers, men who have spent their lives on the frontiers of empire, who speak the language of violence fluently. You know their names, their histories, their families. You have made it your business to know. A good emperor, your adoptive father, Antoninus Pius, taught you, knows his instruments. They salute, fist to chest, the sharp crack of it filling the small space. You return the gesture, and they relax slightly, though never entirely. You are their commander, but you are also the embodiment of Rome itself, the living avatar of an empire that stretches from the gray seas of Britannia to the burning deserts of Mesopotamia. To fail you is to fail Rome. To disappoint you is to disappoint the gods. The weight they carry is almost as heavy as your own. The briefing begins. Scouts report that the Marcomanni have been seen massing 15 miles to the north. Their numbers are difficult to estimate in the dense forests, but it is clear they are preparing for something. Perhaps a major assault on one of your fortified positions. Perhaps an attempt to cross the Danube in force. Your officers debate strategies, their voices confident and professional. They speak of flanking maneuvers and supply lines, of the optimal deployment of cavalry, and the effectiveness of artillery against massed barbarian infantry. You listen, you nod, you ask questions, but part of your mind is elsewhere, back in that notebook on your desk. You are thinking about a passage you wrote weeks ago, about how the rational soul maintains its proper disposition when it accepts what happens and what is allotted to it. You are thinking about the contradiction of trying to maintain inner peace while planning the deaths of thousands. The Marcomanni are human beings. You remind yourself, they have families, hopes, fears. They love their children just as you love yours. And yet, you will kill them. You must kill them, because they threaten Rome, and Rome is your responsibility, your burden, your fate. The dawn sacrifice is a ritual as old as Rome itself, and you perform it with the same careful attention you bring to everything else, even as your mind rebels against the theater of it all. The altar has been erected on a small rise overlooking the camp, positioned so that the thousands of soldiers below can witness their emperor communing with the divine. The priest, an elderly man whose hands shake slightly as he performs the ancient gestures, has prepared everything according to tradition. The white bull, garlanded with flowers that seem obscenely bright against the gray landscape. The bronze bull for catching the blood. The sacred knives, polished until they gleam. You stand before this altar in your ceremonial robes, purple and gold, the costume of divine authority. The priest intones the prayers in the old Latin, the formal phrases that have been repeated for centuries, asking Jupiter best and greatest for his favor, asking Mars the Avenger for victory, asking the deified emperors who came before you to guide your hand. You repeat the responses you have memorized since childhood, when your adoptive father Antoninus first taught you the duties of imperial piety. The bull is brought forward. It goes willingly, drugged, or simply resigned to its fate. You cannot tell. The priest examines it carefully, checking for any blemish that might make it unacceptable to the gods. Finding none, he nods to you. This is the moment. This is when the emperor, the supreme pontiff of Rome's state religion, must demonstrate his connection to the divine. You take the knife. It is heavier than it looks, the blade wickedly sharp. The bulls, I regard you with what you imagine is ancient wisdom, though you know this is projection. The pathetic human need to find meaning in everything. Yucca. The blood comes hot and red. steaming in the cold air. It fills the bronze bowl, overflowing onto the earth. The priest examines the organs, reading portents in the shape of the liver, the color of the intestines. He announces, in a voice calculated to carry to the watching soldiers, that the gods are pleased. The omens are favorable. Victory is assured. The men cheer, a roar that echoes across the valley. They need this certainty, this divine sanction. You have given it to them, even as you write in your private thoughts that the universe is indifferent, that there are no gods who care about the petty squabbles of men. The hypocrisy burns, but you swallow it down. This is your duty. This is what it means to be emperor. You are not just a man, not just a philosopher seeking truth. You are a symbol, a necessary fiction that holds an empire together. If your soldiers need to believe that Jupiter himself has blessed their cause, then you will play the part of the pious emperor. Your private doubts must remain private. The world is not ready for an emperor who admits that the gods might be nothing more than stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the chaos. After the sacrifice, you address the assembled legions. They stand in perfect formation, thousands upon thousands of them, armor gleaming, standards held high. The eagle of Rome, the symbol of their legion's honor, watches over them. You can see the young faces and the old, the veterans with their scars and decorations, the new recruits who still believe war is glorious. They are all looking at you, waiting for you to inspire them, to tell them that their suffering has meaning. You speak of duty. You speak of Rome's civilizing mission, of bringing order to chaos, law to barbarity. You speak of their courage and their sacrifice, of the eternal glory that awaits those who fall in defense of the empire. You quote Homer, because these men, even the illiterate ones, know the old stories. You remind them that Achilles shows a short life of glory over a long life of obscurity. You tell them that they are the shield of civilization, the wall against which barbarism breaks. And they believe you. You can see it in their faces, the way they stand straighter, the way the fear in their eyes is replaced by determination. Your words have power. The philosopher's skill with language, honed through years of study, has been weaponized. You have turned doubt into certainty, fear into courage. You have made them ready to die. You wonder, not for the first time, if this makes you a monster. The briefing with your officers continues through the morning. Maps are spread across tables in the command tent. Wooden blocks representing legions are moved across representations of forests and rivers. It is all very abstract, very clean. The blocks do not bleed when they fall. The maps do not show the mud and shit and terror of actual battle. War, from this perspective, is almost like a game, a problem to be solved through superior logistics and tactical thinking. But you know the reality. You have been close enough to battle to know what it smells like. Blood and bowels, sweat and fear, the metallic temps of it mixing with the scent of churned earth and burning wood. You have heard the sounds. The clash of metal, on wood, on bone. The screams of the wounded, calling for their mothers in a dozen different languages. The awful silence after, when the surviving soldiers move among the corpses, finishing off the enemy wounded, looting the dead, looking for their friends. By mid-afternoon, word comes that the Marcomanni are moving. Scouts report a large force advancing through the forest, heading toward one of your outlying forts. The decision must be made quickly. Do you reinforce the fort and risk a pitched battle on ground of the enemy's choosing? Do you withdraw and consolidate your forces, giving up territory but preserving your strength? Do you attempt to flank them, using your superior discipline and organization to turn their advance into an ambush? Your officers argue their positions. Some advocate aggression. Rome does not retreat, they say. To withdraw is to show weakness. Others counsel caution. The Germanic tribes are numerous, and know these forests in ways your soldiers never will. Better to draw them out, to force them to fight on your terms. You listen to all of them, weighing their words, considering not just the military merits, but the political implications. You are fighting a war, yes, but you are also managing an empire that expects constant victory from its armies. You make your decision. You will reinforce the fort but also send cavalry units to harass the Marcomanni flanks, to slow their advance and disrupt their formation. It is a compromise, a middle path between aggression and caution. You can see that some of your officers are disappointed, perhaps hoping for a more dramatic order, but they salute and move to execute your command. Wheaten and Ur trumpets are blaring across the camp. Sentries are forming up. Cavalry units are mounting. The great machine of the Roman military is grinding into motion, all of it set in motion by your words, your decision. You watch them march out, columns of soldiers moving with practiced efficiency. These men will fight because you told them to. Some of them will die because you put them in harm's way. You have written in your meditations that death is a natural part of life, that to fear it is irrational, that the rational soul accepts what must be. But you are not the one marching toward potential death. It is easy to be philosophical about mortality when you are safe in your command tent. The contradiction gnaws at you. The battle, when it comes, is everything you feared and expected. Reports filter back throughout the late afternoon and evening. The fort is holding, but barely. The Marcomanni attack in waves, throwing themselves against the walls with a ferocity born of desperation. Your reinforcements arrive in time. Your cavalry successfully disrupts the enemy rear. The Germanic forces break and retreat into the forest, leaving their dead piled before the gates. You have won. The fort is saved. Roman discipline and superior tactics have once again proved their worth. When the courier brings you the final report, complete with casualty figures, your officers celebrate. Wine is put toasts are drunk to your tactica genius, to the invincibility of Rome, to Mars the Avenger, who granted them victory. You do not join them. You nod, you smile, you say the appropriate words. But inside, you are calculating. 300 Roman soldiers dead, perhaps 500 wounded, many of whom will die of their wounds or infection in the coming days. The Marcomanni losses are estimated at over 2,000, though such numbers are always unreliable. 2,300 men dead because of decisions you made. 2,300 futures erased. Mothers who will never see their sons again. Children who will grow up without fathers. Wives who will weep themselves to sleep. You are told that this is victory. You are told that this is what being emperor means. You are told that these men died so that civilization could triumph over barbarism, so that the Pax Romana could be maintained, so that farmers in Gaul and merchants in Egypt could live in peace. Perhaps it is true. Perhaps their deaths had meaning. Perhaps you are right to trade these lives for the abstract good of the empire. But when you return to your tent that night, when you light your lamp and open your notebook, you cannot help but write how much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says, or does, or thinks, but only to what he does himself. For it is not the actions of others that disturb us, but our own judgments of them. But whose judgments matter when you are the one giving the orders? Whose actions are you responsible for, if not the ones you commanded to be taken? You are the emperor. You cannot pretend that you are merely a private citizen, focused only on your own virtue. Your decisions have consequences that ripple across the world. Your philosophy must somehow account for this, or it is useless. You write late into the night, trying to reconcile trying to find a framework that allows you to be both the Stoic philosopher who accepts fate and seeks inner tranquility, and the Roman emperor who must make terrible choices and live with their consequences. The lamp burns low. The camp falls silent, except for the calls of the sentries, and still you write, searching for answers that seem to slip further away with every word. Sleep, when it finally comes, is fitful and brief. You dream of the bull from this morning's sacrifice, its knowing eye watching you as the knife descends. You dream of soldiers falling, their faces turning to look at you accusingly. You wake before dawn, cold and unrested, to begin the cycle again. Another day of command. Another day of philosophical crisis. Another day of being Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher empire, who wishes only for peace, but is condemned to make war. The messenger arrives on a gray afternoon when the sky itself seems sick, swollen with clouds that promise rain but deliver only a fine, miserable mist. He has ridden hard from Rome, changing horses at every way station, pushing himself and his mounts to the edge of Ender. You can see it in his face when he enters your tent, the exhaustion and something else. Fear, perhaps, or grief. He bows low, his mud-splattered cloak spreading around him, and you know before he speaks that the news is bad. You dismiss your officers. Wait until you are alone with only your private secretary to witness and record. The messenger straightens, his hands trembling slightly as he reaches into his leather pouch and withdraws the sealed documents. The seal is that of the urban prefect, the official charged with maintaining order in Rome itself. You break the wax, unroll the papyrus, and begin to read. The words seem to blur before your eyes. You read them once, twice, a third time, as if repetition might somehow change their meaning. But they remain stubbornly, horrifically the same. The plague, the disease that has haunted the empire for nearly a decade now, has worsened catastrophically. What began as a manageable crisis, terrible but contained, has exploded into something approaching apocalypse. The dead in Rome alone now numbered in the thousands per day. The city's undertakers and gravediggers cannot keep pace. Bodies are being burned in mass pyres outside the city walls, the smoke visible for miles, the stench carried on the wind to contaminate the air even for those still living. The Tibet is choked with corpses that families have dumped there when they could not afford proper burial or cremation. The streets are littered with the dead and dying. People collapse in the forums, in the markets, in the temples where they have gone to pray to gods who seem to have abandoned them. But it is not just Rome. The dispatches from other provinces are equally grim. Alexandria, the second city of the empire, reports similar death tolls. Antioch is in chaos. In Asia Minor, entire villages have been depopulated, standing empty except for the unburied dead and the dogs that feed on them. The trade routes have broken down as merchants refuse to travel, terrified of carrying the disease. The economy, already strained by years of war, is collapsing. Tax revenues have plummeted because there are simply fewer people to tax, and many of those still alive are too impoverished by the disaster to pay. The report describes the symptoms in clinical detail: the fever that comes suddenly and burns with terrible heat, the pustules that erupt across the skin, black and foul, the bleeding from the eyes and mouth in the final stages, the delirium that makes the dying cry out in terror, seeing visions of demons come to drag them to the underworld. Death comes in days, sometimes hours. There is no cure. The physicians, despite their best efforts and their appeals to Asclepius, can do nothing but make their patients more comfortable as they die. Many physicians have themselves succumbed, adding to the general catastrophe. The messenger provides his own verbal account, details too terrible or too uncertain to commit to official record. He speaks of riots in the streets, of people attacking anyone they believe might be spreading the disease. Foreign merchants, especially those from the east where the plague is thought to have originated, have been murdered by mobs. There are stories of families abandoning their sick relatives, leaving them to die alone rather than risk infection. Stories of parents smothering their own infected children, believing it a mercy. Stories of people fleeing the cities in terror, spreading the disease to the countryside as they run. And underneath all of this, a current of something even more dangerous. Whispers that the plague is divine punishment. Some say Rome is being punished for abandoning the old gods, for the tolerance shown to foreign cults and strange religions. Others, particularly among the Christians, claim the opposite, that the pagan gods are demons and the plague is punishment for continuing to worship them. The temples are packed with desperate people making offerings, sacrificing anything they have left in hopes of appeasing whatever divine power has unleashed this horror. But the Christians meet in secret, and there are rumors that their numbers are growing, that people are turning to this strange Eastern religion that promises resurrection and eternal life precisely when death seems to be everywhere. You sit in silence after the messenger finishes. Your secretary has been taking notes, his stylus scratching across his wax tablet, but now even he has stopped, waiting for your response. What can you say? What can you do? You are the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world, master of armies that have conquered nations, and yet you are utterly helpless before this invisible enemy. You cannot order the plague to stop. You cannot send legions to fight it. You cannot negotiate with it, or intimidate it, or bribe it. It simply is, as natural and implacable as a storm or an earthquake. Your Stoic training tells you that this is exactly right. The plague is an indifferent natural phenomenon, no more evil or good than a flood or a drought. It is simply the universe operating according to its nature. Diseases arise, spread, kill, and eventually run their course. To rage against this is as futile as raging against the changing of the seasons. The rational response is acceptance. You should focus on what is within your control, your own response, your own virtue, your own maintenance of proper judgment, and accept what is beyond your control. But the philosopher's rational acceptance rings hollow in the face of such suffering. These are not abstract principles being debated in a garden school. These are real people dying in agony, their lives cut short, their families destroyed. These are Roman citizens, people you are sworn to protect, people who look to you as their father and guardian. The principle that you should accept what you cannot control is little comfort when what you cannot control is mass death on a scale that threatens the very survival of your empire. You think of the passage you wrote just last week. In a moment of philosophical clarity, the universes change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. It seemed profound when you wrote it, a distillation of Stoic wisdom. But now it feels like a cruel joke. What good are your thoughts when the physical reality is thousands of corpses rotting in the streets? Can you think your way out of a plague? Can you reason the disease into not killing? You give orders, because that is what emperors do. You dictate messages to be sent to Rome and the other major cities. You command that the state treasury be opened to fund relief efforts. Grain distributions must be increased to prevent famine among the survivors. Public slaves and the army are to be mobilized to dispose of bodies properly. You authorize funds for additional physicians to be recruited and trained, even though you know most of them will be useless. You order prayers and sacrifices throughout the empire, even though you privately doubt their efficacy. You are doing something, even if that something is inadequate, even if it is merely the appearance of imperial action rather than actual solution. But the most difficult order is the one you do not give. You do not order a return to Rome. You cannot. The war here on the Danube is not finished. The Germanic tribes are still a threat. If you withdraw your legions now, if you abandon this frontier, decades of Roman blood and treasure will have been spent for nothing. The barbarians will pour across the river and ravage the province. You will have traded one disaster for another. And so you must stay here, in the cold and the mud, fighting a winnable war, while back home, an unwinnable war rages against an enemy you cannot see. The guilt is immense. You are here, relatively safe, on the frontier where the plague, though present, is less virulent than in the crowded cities. Your family is in Rome, or was, when these dispatches were written. Your wife Faustina, your children, they are exposed to the disease while you are far away. You have sent them into danger by insisting they remain in the capital, showing imperial stability while you are absent. What kind of father, what kind of husband, chooses duty over family? What kind of man lets philosophy trump love? The questions have no good answers. Every choice is wrong. Stay on the frontier, and you neglect your duties to the suffering people of Rome. Return to Rome, and you abandon the legions and risk losing the war. Send your family away from Rome to safety, and you appear cowardly, suggesting that the emperor himself fears the plague and does not believe the gods will protect Rome. Keep them in Rome, and you risk their lives. You are trapped by your own power. You are the emperor, which means every decision you make affects millions of lives, and every decision is impossible. That night, you're right, everything is fruit to me, which your seasons bring, O nature. All things come from you, exist in you, return to you. You write it because it is true, because your philosophical training has taught you to see the interconnectedness of all things, the eternal cycle of generation and destruction. Birth and death are part of the same process. The plague is as natural as the spring flowers. To resist it is to resist nature itself. But then you pause, stylus hovering over the wax, and you wonder if this is wisdom or cowardice. Is it enlightened acceptance to tell yourself that the death of thousands is just nature taking its course? Or is it a convenient excuse, a way to abdicate responsibility, to avoid confronting your own helplessness? You are supposed to be the guardian of Rome, the father of your people. Fathers are supposed to protect their children, but you cannot protect them from this. You can only watch, from a distance, as they suffer and die. The lamp burns low. Outside, you hear the sound of coughing from a nearby tent, that same deep, rattling cough that seems to be everywhere now. The plague has followed the armies north, moving along the trade routes and military roads, efficient as any Roman legion. Your soldiers are dying of it, even as they fight the barbarians. They survive the battles only to be killed by an enemy they cannot see, cannot fight, cannot defeat. You close your eyes and try to center yourself, to find that place of inner tranquility that your philosophy promises is always available, always within reach, regardless of external circumstances. But all you can see are the images conjured by the messenger's reports. Bodies burning in mass pyres, streets empty, except for the dead, children crying over the corpses of their parents. The great city of Rome, the eternal city, brought low by something smaller than can be seen by human eyes. You are Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world, and you are helpless. This, perhaps, is the hardest lesson your philosophy has taught you. That power is an illusion, that control is a fiction, that no matter how many legions you command, no matter how many subjects call you master, there are forces in the world that render all your authority meaningless. You can order men to their deaths on the battlefield, but you cannot order the plague to stop. You are as subject to fate as the lowest slave. The difference is that the slave is not responsible for the lives of millions. The slave can simply endure. You must endure, while simultaneously trying to hold together an empire that is coming apart in your hands. You must maintain the appearance of control, while feeling the weight of your utter lack of it. You must be the emperor, the living god, the avatar of Ramatarna, even as you are confronted daily with your own mortality and when you finally sleep, hours before dawn, you dream of Rome burning, not with fire, but but with fever. You dream of walking through empty streets, where the only sound is the buzzing of flies. You wake with a start, your heart pounding, and for a moment you cannot remember where you are. Then the reality settles back over you, like a wayu, harin Germania. The war continues. The plague rages, and you, the philosopher emperor, must find a way to face another day of impossible choices. 3 days after the plague report, when you are still reeling from the weight of that news, still trying to formulate adequate responses to a crisis that seems to have no solution, another messenger arrives. This one comes from the east, from Syria, and the seal on his dispatches bears the mark of your governor. There, a loyal man you have trusted for years. You'll break the seal expecting more bad news about the plague, perhaps reports of its spread into the eastern province, or requests for additional resources to combat it. What you read instead stops your breath. Avidius Cassius, your general commanding the eastern legions, the man you appointed to restore order after the Parthian war, the man you trusted implicitly, has declared himself emperor. He has taken the purple. He has proclaimed that you, Marcus Aurelius, are dead, killed by the plague in Germania, and that he acts now to preserve the empire from chaos and civil war. The eastern legions have acclaimed him. Egypt, with its vital grain supplies, is under his control. Syria, with its wealth and strategic position, is his. Large parts of Asia Minor have joined him. Nearly a third of the empire has, in a matter of weeks, been torn away from your authority. You read the words over and over, certain there must be some mistake. Avidius Cassius, the man who served so ably in the war against Parthia, the man whose military genius you had relied upon to secure Rome's eastern frontier, the man you had considered, in your private thoughts, a friend. Not in the intimate sense, not in the way you and your adoptive brother, Lucius, had been friends, but in the bonds forged between men who serve the same cause, who labor under the same burden of duty to Rome. He has betrayed you, and the method of his betrayal is particularly cruel. He has claimed you are dead. He has built his usurpation on a lie, capitalizing on the confusion caused by the plague, on the slow communication between the distant frontiers and the heartland of the empire. By the time this news reaches you, he has had weeks, perhaps months, to consolidate his power. He has moved first, seized the initiative, and presented the eastern provinces with a fait accompli. Your emperor is dead. Long live your emperor. The personal wound is deep, deeper than you expected. You have spent years cultivating philosophical detachment from such things. You have written repeatedly about not being disturbed by the actions of others, about maintaining your own virtue regardless of external circumstances. You have told yourself, and meant it, that you do not crave approval or loyalty beyond what duty demands. You have prepared yourself to be betrayed, because you know that power breeds treachery, that the imperial purple is a target painted on your back that every ambitious man can see. But knowing a thing intellectually and experiencing it emotionally are very different. The betrayal hurts. It hurts because you trusted him. It hurts because you believe, despite everything, that you have been a good emperor, a just emperor, a man who has tried to live according to philosophical principles rather than mere appetite or ambition. You have not been a tyrant. You have not ruled through terror. You have tried to be worthy of the power given to you. And still, it is not enough. Still, men scheme against you. Still, your reward for virtue is rebellion. Your officers, when you call them in to inform them, react with predictable fury. They speak of treason, of punishment, of the necessity of making an example. They want to march east immediately, to crush this rebellion with overwhelming force, to bring back Avidius Cassius in chains, and execute him in the traditional Roman manner. Flogged, beheaded, his body thrown from the Tarpeian rock, his name struck from all public records. Damnatio memoriae, the erasure of his very existence from history. This is how Rome deals with usurpers. But you surprise them with your response. You are angry, yes, you are hurt. But you are also still a philosopher, still a man trying to live according to rational principles. And your reason tells you several things. First, civil war is the worst fate that can befall Rome. The wars between Caesar and Pompey, between Octavian and Mark Antony, tore the empire apart and killed hundreds of thousands. Your empire is already suffering from plague, from economic disruption, from the constant pressure of barbarian attacks on every frontier. To add civil war to this catalogue of disasters might be the blow from which Rome cannot recover. Every legionary who dies fighting another legionary is one fewer defender against the Parthians, the Germans, the raiders from across every border. Every coin spent on civil war is one fewer coin for plague relief. 4 grain distributions. for the maintenance of roads and aqueducts that hold civilization together. Second, you know something that your officers, in their righteous anger, seem to have forgotten. Avidius Cassius is an excellent general. He is beloved by his troops. If you march east to fight him, it will not be a quick or easy victory. The eastern legions are seasoned, well supplied, and fighting for a man they believe in. The war could drag on for years. And while you are fighting in the east, what happens here on the Danube? Do the Germanic tribes simply wait patiently for you to finish your civil war? Do they not see opportunity in Roman division? Third, and perhaps most importantly, from a philosophical standpoint, you understand something about human motivation that your officers, trained only in the brutal calculus of military force, do not. Avidius Cassius did not rebel because he is evil or mad. He rebelled because he believed, or at least claimed to believe, that you were dead. He acted, in his own mind, to prevent chaos, to preserve the empire from the disaster of having no clear successor. Your son Commodus is young, untested, perhaps not ready to rule. Cassius may have genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. Of course, this is likely self-serving rationalization. The man obviously has ambition. He has seized power and will not give it up easily, but the point is that he has given his soldiers and the eastern provinces a justification, a reason to follow him that is not pure naked ambition. He has cloaked his treachery in the garb of necessity and duty to Rome. And this means that many who follow him are not themselves traitors, not in their own minds. They are simply soldiers following orders, provinces accepting what they believe to be legitimate authority. This is the crack in his armor. This is how you can defeat him without fighting. You make a decision that shocks your assembled officers. You announce that you will offer amnesty, broad, sweeping amnesty, to all who have followed Avidius Cassius, from the highest officers to the lowest from provincial governors to local magistrates. They followed Cassius because they believed you were dead. Now they will learn you are alive, and you will give them the opportunity to return to their true allegiance without punishment, without reprisal, without the stain of treason hanging over them for the rest of their lives. As for Cassius himself, you announce something even more remarkable. If he surrenders, if he acknowledges his error and returns to loyalty, you will spare his life. You will remove him from command, certainly. You will send him into comfortable but secure retirement. But you will not execute him. You will not even imprison him. You will demonstrate mercy. Your officers are stunned into silence. One of them, a grizzled veteran of 40-year service, finally finds his voice. "This is weakness," he says. "This is exactly what encouraged the rebellion in the first place. If there is no consequence for treason, every ambitious man in the empire will try his luck. You must make an example. You must show that rebellion ends in blood and terror." You understand his perspective. You do, but you explain to him, and to all of them, your reasoning. Fear is a tool, yes, but it is a blunt tool. It breeds resentment, paranoia, more betrayal. Mercy, unexpected mercy from a position of strength, is far more powerful. It divides your enemies. It gives those who followed Cassius an honorable way out. It shows the entire empire that their emperor is not a tyrant, not a man who rules through terror, but a philosopher king who values Roman lives, even the lives of those who have wronged him. And there is another reason, one you do not speak aloud, because it is too personal, too much an admission of your own pain. You do not want to kill Avidius. Despite his betrayal, despite the chaos he has unleashed, you do not want more death. There has been so much death already. The plague, the wars, the endless grinding attrition of empire. You are tired of death. You are tired of being the agent of death. Your philosophy teaches you that death is natural, nothing to fear, but it also teaches you that every human being possesses the divine spark of reason, that every life has value. To kill when not absolutely necessary is to extinguish that spark unnecessarily. It is a failure of the philosophical ideal. You are emperor. You have killed thousands, tens of thousands, in the name of Rome. But perhaps, Justizon say, you can choose not to kill. Perhaps you can break the cycle of violence and retribution that has characterized Roman politics since the days of the Republic. Perhaps you can prove that a philosopher can also be an emperor, that reason and mercy are not weaknesses, but the highest strengths. Your officers are not convinced, but they obey, they always obey. That is what makes them good Romans. Orders are dispatched. Proclamations are prepared. The word will go out across the empire. Marcus Aurelius lives. He is not dead from plague. He stands ready to forgive those who were misled by false reports. Return to your true emperor, and be welcomed back without punishment. But even as you give these orders, even as you perform this act of philosophical mercy, doubt gnaws at you. Are you being wise or weak? Are you demonstrating stoic virtue, or are you simply afraid of civil war? Are you motivated by philosophical principle, or by the tired reluctance of an old man who has seen too much blood? You do not know. You cannot know. You can only act according to what seems right, what seems rational, and hope that history will judge you kindly. That night, alone in your tent, you write, when you are offended at any man's fault, immediately turn to yourself and reflect in what manner you yourself have erred. For example, in thinking that money is a good thing, or pleasure, or a bit of reputation, and the like. By attending to this, you will quickly forget your anger, especially if this is added, that the man is compelled by necessity. For what else could he do? Or, if you can, remove from him the compulsion. The words are meant to be comfort, to be wisdom, but as you write them, you cannot help but feel their inadequacy. Avidius Cassius was not compelled by necessity. Hechos ambition, hechos betrayals, and you are choosing mercy. But is that removing the compulsion, or is it simply revealing your own weakness? The lamp flickers, the night presses in around your small circle of light. Outside, the camp is settling into its night routines, guard changes, final rounds, the snoring of exhausted soldiers who have no philosophical dilemmas to keep them awake. They sleep because they have been trained to follow orders, to not question, to let others make the hard decisions. You envy them their simplicity. You envy them their untroubled sleep. But you are the emperor, and sleep does not come easily to those who wear the purple. You sit in your tent, staring at the words you have just written, wondering if you have just made the greatest decision of your reign, or the greatest mistake. Only time will tell. And time, as your philosophy constantly reminds you, is the one thing even emperors cannot control. The morning you choose to address the full assembled legions about Avidius Cassius's rebellion is bitterly cold. Frost coats everything, turning the world into something crystalline and alien. Your breath comes in white clouds. The ground crunches beneath your feet as you walk toward the raised platform that has been constructed for this purpose. Your officers have insisted on ceremony, on grandeur. The platform is draped in purple, the color of imperial authority. Your eagle standards are arrayed behind you, gold gleaming in the weak sunlight. The Praetorian Guard stands in formation, their armor polished to mirror brightness. But what matters most is not the ceremony. What matters is the sea of faces before you, thousands of them, legionaries who have been fighting in this miserable place for 3 years now. Men who are tired, homesick, traumatized by battle and plague. Men who thought they were nearing the end of their campaign, that victory over the Germanic tribes was in sight, that soon they could return to the lives they left behind. And now you must tell them that instead of going home, they must march across the entire breadth of the empire to fight other Romans. You can see their exhaustion in their posture, and the way they stand just slightly less rigidly than regulation demands. You can see their wariness in their eyes. They are veterans. They know that when the emperor calls a full assembly like this, it means their lives are about to get worse. Then you tell them about your offer of amnesty. You explain your reasoning. Civil war is the worst fate that can befall Rome. Every Roman soldier who dies in civil war is a waste, a tragedy. These are not barbarians, they would be fighting. These are fellow Romans, men who have been misled by false information and their general's ambition. If it is possible to win this war without fighting, is that not preferable to a bloody conflict that will drain the empire's strength? You can see that some are skeptical. They want retribution. They want the satisfaction of punishing traitors. But you push forward with your argument. You appeal to their sense of Roman identity. The greatest glory of Rome, you tell them, is not just its military might. It is its justice, its law, its ability to transform enemies into citizens. Rome conquers with the sword, yes, but it endures through its institutions, through its offer of citizenship and law and order. To meet this rebellion with a necessary violence would be to betray Rome's highest principles. And then you make them a promise. When this is done, when the rebellion is put down and peace restored, you will give them rest. You will return with them to Rome. You will not keep them on campaign forever. You understand that there are limits to what can be asked of men, even Roman soldiers. They have served with honor and courage. They deserve to go home. You speak of duty, but not in the abstract way generals usually do. You speak of specific duties. Their duty to Rome, yes, but also their duty to their families, to the future, to the idea that their children will grow up in a world where Romans do not slaughter Romans over personal ambition. You speak of honor, but you redefine it. Honor is not just victory in battle. Honor is doing what is necessary, even when it is hard. Honor is choosing mercy when vengeance would be easier. Honor is being the better man, the better Roman. You quote Marcus Aurelius without attributing the quote, because these are your own private thoughts. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. You tell them that Avidius Cassius has shown himself willing to plunge Rome into civil war for his own ambition. But you, and they, will show that true Romans are above such pet. You will win through superior virtue, not just superior force. The speech builds to its conclusion. You stand before them, this army that has bled for you, and you do something that emperors rarely do. You acknowledge that you are asking much of them. You do not pretend this will be easy. You do not offer them platitudes about glory or the favor of the gods. You simply tell them the truth. This is hard. This is unfair. This is not what they signed up for. But this is what duty demands. And you believe in them. You believe in their strength, their discipline, their essential Roman. You believe they will do this because it is right, because it is necessary, because they are who they are. When you finish speaking, there is a moment of silence. You hold your breath, unsure how they will react. You have gambled everything on honesty, on treating them not as tools, but as thinking beings capable of understanding complex moral arguments. If they reject your reasoning, if they refuse to march, your authority is finished. An emperor whom his legions will not follow is no emperor at all. Then one man, somewhere in the middle ranks, begins to cheer. Others join him. The sound builds and swells until it becomes a roar that seems to shake the very ground. They are cheering not just for victory or glory, but for you, for your honesty, for your willingness to share the burden rather than simply command from above. They are cheering because you have spoken to them as men, as Romans, as partners in this terrible enterprise, rather than as mere instruments of your will. You feel something break inside you, some dam that has been holding back emotion. You have been so strong for so long, maintaining the philosophical detachment, the stoic calm. But in this moment, facing this wave of loyalty and affection from men you are about to lead into hardship, you feel tears prick at your eyes. You do not let them fall. Emperors do not weep in public, but you feel them, and you acknowledge to yourself that this is not a failure of philosophy. This is human connection, human trust, and it is as valuable as any virtue. You raise your hand, and the cheering gradually subsides. You give the order to prepare for the march. Trumpets sound. Officers begin barking commands. The great machine of the Roman army begins its transformation, shifting from a force oriented toward Germania to one that will traverse the empire eastward. Supply wagons are loaded. Routes are planned. The mundane logistics of moving tens of thousands of men and all their equipment begins to unfold with practiced efficiency. You descend from the platform, and as those soldiers press forward, trying to touch you, to be close to you, your guards attempt to keep them back, but you wave them off. You reach out and clasp hands with these men. You look them in the eyes. You remember, as your adoptive father taught you, that these are individuals, not abstractions. This one has a scar across his cheek and kind eyes. This one is young, barely old enough to serve. This one is a grizzled veteran with decorations on his armor, marking decades of service. Each of them will march with you. Each of them might die because of decisions you make, but each of them has chosen, in this moment, to follow you not because they must, but because they want to. Because you have earned, through your honesty and your shared suffering, something more valuable than mere obedience. You have earned their trust. Later, back in your tent, you collapse onto your camp bed, suddenly exhausted. The performance of being emperor, of being the inspirational leader, has drained you completely. You are alone now, and you can drop the mask. Your hands are shaking. The weight of what you have just done, the commitment you have made to these men, and they to you, settles over you like a physical presence. You reach for your notebook, your constant companion, your philosophical refuge. You write, "Do not despise death, but be content with it, since this too is one of those things which nature wills. For such as it is to be young and to grow old and to increase and to reach maturity and to have teeth and beard and gray hairs, and to beget and to be pregnant and to bring forth, and all the other natural operations which the seasons of your life bring, such also is dissolution." The words are true. Death is natural. It is nothing to fear. But you are not writing about your own death tonight. You are writing about all the deaths to come, the soldiers who will fall on this march, the casualties of the civil war if your gambit of mercy fails. You are trying to prepare yourself philosophically for the weight of all those deaths, to accept them as natural consequences of the situation you find yourself in. But even as you write the words, you know they are inadequate, Philosophy can give you a framework for understanding death. It can remove the irrational fear of it, but it cannot remove the grief, the guilt, the weight of responsibility. These men will die because you ordered them to march. If your strategy of mercy fails, if civil war erupts despite your best efforts, the blood will be on your hands. You can accept this as fate, as necessity, as the will of the gods or the turning of the universal logos, but you cannot escape the human emotional reality of it. You are a philosopher trying to be an emperor, but you are also, and perhaps most fundamentally, just a man. A tired, aging man who wishes he could lay down his burdens and find peace. But peace is not yours to find. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. Your fate is to carry on, to make the hard decisions, to bear the unbearable weight, until death finally releases you. The march will begin tomorrow, and with it, the next chapter of your endless ordeal. You extinguish your lamp and lie in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the camp preparing for movement, and you pray to gods you are not sure you believe in, for the strength to see this through, for the wisdom to make the right choices, for the courage to live with the consequences of those choices, whatever they may be. Sleep, when it finally comes, is dreamless and brief. Morning will come too soon, and with it, the long march east into uncertainty. The army moves like a great serpent across the landscape, miles long, thousands of men and animals, and wagons transforming roads into rivers of disciplined motion. You ride near the front, as you promised you would, on a horse rather than in a litter, enduring the same dust and heat and discomfort as your soldiers. Your back aches constantly. The saddle chafes, but you do not complain. You cannot. You are being watched constantly. Every sign of weakness is noted, discussed in the ranks, either building their confidence or eroding it. So you ride with your back straight and your face composed, the image of imperial dignity even when your body screams for rest. The march east takes you through the heart of the empire, and it is a journey through a landscape of contrasts. You leave behind the dark forests and cold rivers of Germania, entering first into the more civilized provinces of the Balkans. The roads here are better, paved Roman roads that have carried legions and commerce for generations. The countryside is more settled, with farms and villages dotting the landscape. People come out to watch you pass, standing by the roadside in silent awe. To them, you are a figure of legend, the emperor himself riding past their humble villages. Some kneel, some reach out hands as if to touch divinity. You nod to them, raise your hand in blessing, play the part they expect. But you also see the effects of the plague. Every town has its pyres, its mass graves. The population seems thinner than it should be. Fields lie fallow, for want of workers to tend them. Villages that should be thriving are half-empty buildings, standing vacant with the blank stare of windows that no longer hold life. The plague has been here, sweeping through like an invisible army, and it has left devastation in its wake. You order rest stops more frequently than might be militarily optimal, not because your soldiers need them, though they do, but because you need them. Your body, aging and worn by years of campaign, cannot maintain the pace it once could, but you frame these stops as strategic, as opportunities to gather intelligence from local officials, to reassure the populace that their emperor has not abandoned them to the twin horrors of plague and rebellion. Your officers understand the real reason, but they are too loyal to speak of it. They allow you the fiction of strength. At night, the camps that spring up are small cities unto themselves, thousands of tents in precise geometric patterns, a tribute to Roman organizational genius. Fortifications are dug even for overnight stays, ditches, and earthen walls, because Romans take no chances. Sentries are posted, fires are lit. The smell of cooking food fills the air, mixing with the ever-present smell of horse and sweat and leather. You sit in your command tent and receive reports. Progress reports on the march, intelligence reports about the situation in the east, logistical reports about supplies and equipment. You review it all with the attention to detail that your philosophical training has instilled in you. Every detail matters. An army marches on its stomach, as the saying goes. If your supply lines break down, if your soldiers go hungry, discipline will crack, and the entire enterprise will collapse. But there are other reports too, ones that weigh on you more heavily. Reports of desertions, small in number but troubling. Some soldiers, especially those with families in the east, are slipping away in the night, choosing personal ties over duty to Rome. You understand their motivation, even as you must order punishments for those who are caught. A man who has not seen his wife in 3 years, who learns that his home province has declared for Avidius Cassius, faces an impossible choice. duty, or lavandrom, or family. You have faced similar choices yourself. You cannot entirely condemn those who choose differently than you have. As you travel further east, entering Greece, the landscape changes again. The mountains of the Balkans give way to the stark beauty of the Greek countryside, all rocky hills, and olive groves, and brilliant blue sky. This is the land of philosophy, where Socrates and Plato and Aristotle walked, where the intellectual traditions that shaped your own thinking were born. You find yourself moved in ways you did not expect. This is not barbarian territory that Rome has conquered. This is the mother culture, the source of so much that makes Rome great. You make a point of stopping Athens, though it takes you slightly out of your way. You need to connect with the philosophical heritage that sustains you through these dark times. The city is smaller than Rome, more intimate, but even diminished by plague and centuries of Roman dominance, it retains a certain dignity. The Parthenon still stands on its Acropolis, gleaming white marble visible for miles. The Agora, where Socrates once questioned his fellow citizens, is still a bustling marketplace. You visit the philosophical schools, the academy, and the Lyceum, institutions that have survived for centuries teaching the art of thinking clearly. The scholars are honored and overwhelmed by your visit. You are, after all, the philosopher emperor, the living proof that philosophical training is compatible with supreme power. They show you their libraries, their students, their ongoing work. You discuss philosophy with them, grateful for the opportunity to engage with ideas rather than military logistics. One elderly teacher, his face lined with age and wisdom, asks you a question that cuts to the heart of your dilemma. How, he asks, do you reconcile your Stoic beliefs with the violence and politics of imperial rule? How does a man who believes in universal brotherhood, in the essential equality of all rational beings, command armies and make war? How does a man who seeks inner tranquility navigate the chaos of empire? You consider the question seriously. You do not offer easy platitudes or claim that there is no contradiction. You admit that it is the central struggle of your life. You tell him that Stoicism teaches acceptance of one's role in the cosmic order. You were born to be emperor. This is your fate. Your duty assigned by fortune, or providence, or the blind mechanics of cause and effect. To refuse this duty, to retreat into philosophical contemplation and abandon the responsibilities of power, would itself be a kind of vice. The Stoic must act in the world, must fulfill his social roles, even when those roles are difficult and morally complex. But you also admit that this is not a complete answer, that you struggle daily with the contradictions, that your philosophical writings are, in many ways, attempts to think through these problems, to find a way to be both philosopher and emperor. You do not claim to have solved the dilemma. You simply claim to be trying, honestly and with full awareness of the difficulty, to do your best in an impossible situation. The teacher nods, seemingly satisfied. Perhaps, he suggests, your willingness to grapple with these questions, to not simply ignore the contradictions or rationalize them away, is itself a kind of philosophical achievement. You are living the examined life, the life Socrates claimed was the only one worth living. You are not a perfect philosopher or a perfect emperor, but you are trying to be both, and that effort, however imperfect, has value. You leave Athens feeling slightly comforted, though the comfort does not last long. The march continues. You cross into Asia Minor, the wealthy provinces that are the economic heartland of the Eastern Empire. And here, finally, you begin to see the political consequences of Avidius Cassius's rebellion. Cities are divided. Some have declared for him, flying his standards, treating his proclamations as law. Others remain loyal to you, but nervously, uncertain which way the wind will blow. Still others are simply paralyzed, taking no position, waiting to see who will win before committing themselves. You send envoys ahead to each major city, carrying your offers of amnesty, your proclamations that you are alive and still emperor. Some cities immediately reverse their positions, tearing down Cassius's proclamations and welcoming your representatives with elaborate shows of loyalty. Others are more reluctant, hedging their bets, trying to avoid committing too firmly to either side. A few openly defy you, declaring that Cassius is the legitimate emperor and you are either dead or an impostor. The political maneuvering is exhausting in its own way, different from the physical exhaustion of the march but no less draining. You must constantly calculate, constantly consider how each action will be perceived, what message each decision sends. Show too much mercy and you look weak. Show too much ruthlessness and you alienate potential supporters. Navigate between Scylla and Charybdis, trying to find a path that will bring the empire back together without unnecessary bloodshed. Your dreams, on the rare nights when you sleep deeply enough to dream, are troubled. You dream of standing in the middle of a great building, watching as cracks spread through the walls. You try to shore them up, to hold the structure together through sheer force of will, but there are too many cracks, spreading too fast. The building begins to collapse around you, and you wake with a start, heart pounding, the image of falling masonry still vivid in your mind. The plague continues its work even as you march. Your army loses men, not to battle, but to disease. The sick are left behind in cities along the route, placed in the care of local physicians and officials, because an army cannot march with the dying. You wonder how many of them will recover, how many will find their way back to the legions, how many will die alone in foreign cities, far from home and family. Each loss diminishes your strength, but there is nothing you can do. You cannot fight an enemy you cannot see. As you approach Syria, the heartland of Cassius's power, tension increases. This is where the decision will be made, one way or another. Either your strategy of mercy and amnesty will work, or you will have to fight. Your scouts report that Cassius's forces are substantial, well-equipped, and loyal to him. If it comes to battle, it will be Roman legion against Roman legion. The nightmare scenario you have been trying to avoid, you write more frequently in your meditations during this leg of the journey. The notebook is becoming filled with your thoughts, your attempts to make philosophical sense of your situation. You write about the transience of all things, about how empires rise and fall, about how nothing human is permanent. You write about duty and virtue, about doing what is right, regardless of outcome. You write about death, about accepting it as natural, about not fearing it. But underneath all the philosophical reasoning, there is a current of something more personal. You write about loneliness, about the isolation of command, about how, surrounded by thousands of soldiers and advisors and officials, you are fundamentally alone. No one else bears the weight you bear. No one else makes the decisions you make. You can seek counsel, but the final responsibility is yours alone. And that responsibility, that isolation, is crushing in ways that philosophy cannot entirely alleviate. You think of your family, left behind in Rome, your wife Faustina, your children, especially your son, Commodus. You wonder if you will see them again. You wonder what kind of empire you will leave to Commodus if you die on this campaign. You wonder if he is ready, if you will be able to shoulder the burden when it passes to him. You have doubts, deep doubts, but you push them aside. They are not helpful. They are not productive. You must focus on the present, on the immediate crisis. The future will take care of itself, or it will not. Either way, it is beyond your control. The long march is wearing everyone down. Your soldiers are veterans, trained and disciplined, but even veterans have limits. They march because that is what soldiers do, but you can see the toll it is taking. The enthusiasm from your speech has faded, replaced by the grim determination of men who have committed themselves to a course and will see it through, but take no joy in it. They are doing their duty, no more, no less. And so are you. Every morning, you rise from your camp bed, dress in your armor, mount your horse, and ride at the head of your army. Every night, you review reports, make decisions, write in your notebook. You are doing your duty, fulfilling your role, playing the part that fate has assigned you. But the joy has gone out of it, if there ever was any. You are simply enduring, putting one foot in front of the other, because that is what you must do. The empire stretches before you, vast and troubled, and you are marching through its heart, trying to hold it together by force of will and philosophical conviction. Whether you will succeed remains to be seen. All you can do is continue. Continue marching. Continue deciding. Continue being Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, philosopher and warlord, until the gods, or fate, or blind chance, decree otherwise. The news reaches you on a dusty road in Syria, 3 days' march from where your intelligence suggests Cassius has established his headquarters. The messenger is one of your own scouts, but he brings information from an unexpected source. Officers in Cassius's own camp who have reached out secretly, risking everything to contact you. They want you to know that the situation is unstable, that your offers of amnesty have created fissures in Cassius's support, that his position is not as strong as it appears. You receive this news with cautious optimism. Traitors who betray one master may betray another. This could be a trap, an attempt to lure you into complacency before an attack. You order increased vigilance, double the scouts, prepare for the possibility that this is elaborate misdirection. But you also allow yourself a small hope that your strategy is working, that mercy may indeed prove stronger than fear. 2 days later, another messenger arrives. This one is different. He is an official courier from the office of the governor of Syria, a man who has until this moment been firmly in Cassius's camp. He carries letters sealed with official seals, and his face is carefully neutral, revealing nothing of the contents. You retire to your command tent to read them in private. Your hands, you notice, are shaking slightly as you break the seal. So much depends on what these documents contain: the future of the Empire, the lives of thousands of soldiers, your own fate and legacy. You unfold the papyrus and begin to read. Avidius Cassius is dead. The words leap out at you, stark and stunning. Dead, not killed in battle, not executed after capture, dead by assassination, murdered by his own officers. The dispatches provide details. A conspiracy among his senior commanders, men who had initially supported his claim but had become increasingly nervous as your army approached and your offers of amnesty became known. They saw the writing on the wall. They understood that their position was untenable, that they could not hope to defeat you in open battle, that their best hope for survival was to eliminate Cassius and throw themselves on your mercy. They had struck 3 days ago. Cassius had been in his tent, planning the disposition of his forces for the coming confrontation. His own officers had entered, ostensibly to discuss strategy. Instead, they had drawn their swords. The dispatches do not describe the actual killing in detail, but you can imagine it. The moment of shocked betrayal, the violence, the blood. Cassius, like you, had been a student of philosophy. He would have understood the irony of being killed by men he trusted, the same kind of betrayal he himself had perpetrated against you. The conspirators had then immediately sent word to their subordinate commanders, offering the amnesty you had promised. The rebellion, suddenly leaderless and with its top officers defecting, had collapsed almost instantly. Cities that had declared for Cassius were now scrambling to proclaim their loyalty to you. The Eastern legions, released from their oaths to a dead man, were standing down and awaiting your arrival. You have won. Without fighting a single battle, without losing a single soldier in combat, you have defeated the rebellion. Your strategy of mercy, your gamble that amnesty would be more effective than threats, has paid off beyond your most optimistic hopes. The civil war that could have torn the empire apart, that could have killed tens of thousands and devastated provinces, is over before it truly began. You sit alone with this news for a long time. You should feel elation. You should feel vindication. You should feel relief that your gambler has succeeded, that your philosophical principles have proven practical and effective. This is a triumph of reason over brute force, of mercy over vengeance. This is proof that a philosopher can be an effective emperor, that virtue is not weakness but strength. But what you actually feel is more complex, more ambiguous. There is relief, yes, immense relief, that you will not have to order Romans to kill Romans. There is satisfaction that your reading of human nature was correct, that you understood how to divide your enemy and win without fighting. There is gratitude to the gods or fate or whatever force governs the universe that this crisis has been resolved with minimal bloodshed. But there is also a strange sense of disappointment, even loss. You had prepared yourself mentally and emotionally for confrontation. You had imagined meeting Cassius, face to face, giving him the opportunity to explain his actions, perhaps even offering him forgiveness in person. You had envisioned a dramatic resolution, either through negotiation or, if necessary, through battle. You had built up the coming confrontation into something significant, a test of your philosophy and your leadership. And instead, it has ended in a tent somewhere, with knives in the dark, with betrayal upon betrayal. Cassius never had to answer for his rebellion. He never had to face the consequences of his choices or the mercy you were prepared to offer. He was killed by men seeking to save their own skins, motivated not by loyalty to you but by fear and self. The victory is yours, but it feels hollow, unsatisfying, incomplete. There is also the question of what to do with Cassius's body. The conspirators have preserved it, awaiting your instructions. Traditional Roman justice would demand that it be displayed, humiliated, perhaps dismembered and scattered. He was a traitor, after all. He declared himself emperor against legitimate authority, but he is also dead, no longer a threat, and you had promised mercy. Does mercy extend beyond death? Should you punish a corpse to satisfy tradition and make an example, or should you allow him burial with honor, demonstrating that your forgiveness is genuine and complete? You make your decision. You order that Cassius's body be cremated with full military honors. He was a Roman general, a man who served the empire well before his final betrayal. He deserves to be remembered for his entire life, not just his final mistake. You will not desecrate his remains. You will not punish his family. His memory will not be officially condemned. Let history judge him, as history will judge you. You will show the world that Marcus Aurelius keeps his promises, even to the dead. This decision shocks some of your officers even more than your original offer of amnesty. To show honor to a traitor's corpse seems to them a perversion of Roman values. But you explain, as patiently as you can, that Cassius was also a human being, flawed, as all humans are. He made a terrible decision, driven by ambition and possibly a genuine belief that he was acting for Rome's good. He has paid the ultimate price for that decision. What purpose would further punishment serve? Whom would it benefit? The dead cannot be made more dead. All you can do is choose how the living respond to death. Your orders are carried out. Cassius is cremated with the rites appropriate to a Roman citizen of senatorial rank. His ashes are given to his family for burial. You issue a public statement praising his earlier service to Rome while deploring his final rebellion. You walk a careful line, acknowledging his fault while extending forgiveness, making clear that rebellion is wrong while demonstrating that mercy is possible. It is a delicate balance, but you believe you have struck it correctly. The officers who assassinated Cassius present themselves at your camp, fearful despite your promises. They kneel before you, waiting for judgment. You look at them, these men who killed their commander to curry favor with you, and you feel a mix of disgust and understanding. They are opportunists, yes, motivated by seduction, but they are also pragmatists who saw the futility of continued resistance and chose the path that would save the most lives, including their own. Can you blame them for that? Would it not have been worse if they had remained loyal to Cassius and forced you into battle? You pardoned them, as you promised you would. You even restore them to their ranks, though you make clear they will be watched carefully. You do not pretend to admire them, but you need them. The Eastern legions need their officers, and these men, whatever their moral failures, are experienced commanders. The Empire cannot afford to lose competent men simply because they lack perfect virtue. If you held everyone to that standard, yourself included, no one would be fit to serve. Word of your mercy spreads quickly through the eastern provinces. Cities that had been wavering immediately declare for you. Officials who had supported Cassius send elaborate apologies and protestations of loyalty. The machinery of imperial administration, briefly disrupted, begins to function normally again. It is remarkable how quickly a crisis can evaporate once the central figure is removed. Cassius's rebellion, which seemed so threatening just weeks ago, is now almost as if it never happened. The empire continues, resilient as always, absorbing this disruption the way it has absorbed countless others over the centuries. But you know that appearances are deceiving. The rebellion may be over, but the conditions that enabled it remain. The plague still rages. The economy is still strained. The frontiers are still under pressure. The fundamental problems facing the empire have not been solved by Cassius's death. You have won a victory, yes, but it is a tactical victory in a strategic situation that remains dire. You give your army a few days to rest and resupply before continuing the march. Your men deserve it, and the delay gives you time to consolidate control over the eastern provinces. You meet with local officials, receive delegations, review administrative matters that have been neglected during the crisis. It is tedious work, but necessary. An emperor is not just armies and battles. It is also tax collection and legal disputes and the maintenance of infrastructure. You must attend to these mundane matters even though they seem infinitely less important than the grand questions of war and philosophy. During these days, you also write. Your notebook is now nearly full, pages covered with your cramped handwriting. You reflect on what has happened, trying to extract philosophical lessons from the experience. You write about the unpredictability of fate, how you had prepared for one outcome and received another. You write about the importance of accepting what comes, whether it is what you desired or not. You write about mercy and its practical effects, how your offer of amnesty achieved militarily what force might not have been able to accomplish. But you also write about the unsatisfactory nature of this resolution. You admit to yourself that you are disappointed, that some part of you wanted the confrontation, wanted the opportunity to personally demonstrate your philosophical principles in a dramatic way. This desire, you recognize, is not entirely virtuous. It is tinged with vanity, with a need for validation, with the very attachment to reputation and glory that your philosophy teaches you to transcend. You have won, but the manner of winning has revealed to you your own imperfections, your own distance from the Stoic ideal. This self-awareness does not make you feel better, but it is honest. You are trying to be a philosopher, trying to live according to reason and virtue. But you are also human, subject to all the weaknesses and contradictions that afflict humanity. The goal is not to pretend these weaknesses do not exist, but to recognize them, to work on them to gradually improve. Perfection is not achievable in this life. What is achievable is effort, honesty, the daily practice of trying to be better than you were yesterday. On the 5th day after receiving news of Cassius's death, you resume your march. But the destination has changed. You are no longer rushing to confront a rebel. You are now proceeding in a more measured way toward Antioch. where you will establish your headquarters and begin the work of fully restoring imperial authority in the East. From there, eventually, you will turn your attention back to Rome itself. You will return to the capital, which you have not seen in years, and resume the duties of peacetime administration. But even as you plan for this, even as you envision a return to something like normal life, you know that it is an illusion. There is no normal life for you. There is only duty, an endless succession of crises and decisions and responsibilities. The philosopher's dream of tranquil contemplation, of a life spent in gardens and libraries pursuing wisdom, is forever beyond your reach. Your fate is to be emperor, and being emperor means you can never rest, never fully relax, never set down your burdens. The march continues. The landscape passes by, beautiful and indifferent. Ancient cities, younger than Rome but still older than memory, stand on their hills and watch your legions pass. The Mediterranean sun beats down, harsh and bright, after the grey skies of Germania. Your soldiers march in good order, pleased with their bloodless victory, relieved that they did not have to fight other Romans. Morale is higher than it has been in months. You ride among them, maintaining the image of the victorious emperor, the wise leader whose strategy has succeeded. You smile and wave, you speak encouragingly to the men, you project confidence and satisfaction, and part of you feels these things genuinely. But another part of you, the part that writes in the notebook each night, is still troubled, still questioning, still trying to understand what it means to be a philosopher emperor, in a world that seems designed to test and contradict every philosophical principle you hold dear. The unexpected victory has given you a reprieve, a moment to breathe before the next crisis. But you know, with the certainty that experience has taught you, that the next crisis is coming. It always is. The empire is too vast, too complex, too troubled for peace to last long. Somewhere, even now, new problems are brewing, new enemies are gathering, new disasters are unfolding. And when they come, you'll have to face them, make decisions about them, bear responsibility for their outcomes. This is your fate. This is your duty. And you will fulfill it, because that is what you do, because you are Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, and that means you serve the empire until death releases you. The unexpected victory over Cassius is just one moment in a life defined by service and struggle. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, and the day after tomorrow will bring more, and you will face them all, with philosophy as your guide and duty as your compass, until the final day when you can finally rest. You see Rome from a distance first, as your procession crests the final hill before the approach to the ancient city. The sight stops your breath. After years on the frontiers, years of mud and cold and battle, Rome spreads before you like a vision from another world. The 7 hills, crowded with temples and monuments, and the palaces of the wealthy. The Tiber snaking through it all, crossed by bridges ancient and new. The great aqueducts marching across the landscape like stone giants, bringing water from the hills to sustain 1,000,000 souls. The walls, massive and imposing, the defensive works that have protected Rome for centuries. It should be beautiful. It should fill you with pride and joy, this homecoming to the greatest city the world has ever known. But even from this distance, you can see the signs of sickness. The smoke from funeral pyres rises in columns from outside the walls. Too many columns, too much smoke. The approaches to the city, which should be crowded with traffic, merchants and pilgrims and farmers bringing goods to market, are eerily quiet. Even the air seems wrong, heavy with an oppressive quality that has nothing to do with the weather. Your triumph, your official entry into Rome celebrating the victory over the rebellion, has been prepared with all the traditional pageantry. The Senate has voted you honors. The people are supposed to line the streets and cheer. There will be processions and sacrifices and games. Rome remembers how to celebrate victory even when it is dying, perhaps especially when it is dying, because the spectacle provides a brief escape from the grinding horror of the plague. You enter the city through the ancient gates, and the contrast between the ceremony and the reality is jarring. Yes, there are crowds lining the streets, and yes, they cheer. But the crowds are thinner than they should be, and the cheers have a desperate quality. They are cheering not just for your victory, but for the hope that your return represents. They are cheering because they need to believe that their emperor can save them, that the gods favor Rome, that this nightmare will end. You ride in a gilded chariot, wearing the triumphal regalia, a laurel crown on your head, purple robes flowing. Behind you march your legions, armor polished, standards high, a demonstration of Roman military might. Musicians play, officials walk in formal procession. Captives from the Germanic wars are displayed, though you have made sure they are treated with basic dignity. It is all very grand, very Roman, very much the performance that tradition demands, but you cannot stop noticing the details that break through the pageantry. The buildings with black ribbons hanging from their doors, marking households that have lost someone to the plague. The faces in the crowd, gaunt with hunger and marked by grief. The empty spaces where buildings have been abandoned, their inhabitants dead or fled. The smell, faint but pervasive, of decay and smoke and sickness that no amount of incense burned at street corners can fully mask. You process through the forum, where the ancient temples stand witness to centuries of Roman history. You perform the required sacrifices at the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on the Capitoline Hill, the sacred center of Roman religious life. You speak the ancient prayers, you pour the libations, you make the offerings. The priests proclaim that the gods are pleased, that your victory is a sign of divine favor, that Rome's future is secure. You say the words you are supposed to say, you perform the gestures you are supposed to perform, but inside, you are screaming. Look around you. You want to shout at these priests and senators and officials. Look at what is happening to Rome. If the gods are pleased, why is this city dying? If your emperor has divine favor, why can he not stop the plague? What good is military victory? When the victory is over, fellow Romans, and the real enemy, the invisible enemy, continues to kill with impunity. But you say none of this. You maintain the mast. You play your part in the great theater of empire, because that is what rulers do. They perform certainty when they feel doubt. They project strength when they feel weakness. They smile when they want to weep. The people need their emperor to be confident, divinely favored, in control. So that is what you give them, even though it is a lie, even though you know that you are no more in control than they are. The triumph continues through the day, a carefully choreographed series of events designed to demonstrate Roman power and glorify imperial majesty. There are games in the circus, Maximus, chariot races, and beast hunts, blood and spectacle to distract from the blood and suffering outside. There is a formal banquet for the Senate and other dignitaries, elaborate courses of food that seem obscene when so many in the city are hungry. There are speeches praising your wisdom and courage, poets reciting verses about your deeds, philosophers offering learned discourses on the nature of virtuous rulership. You sit through it all, acknowledging the praise with appropriate modesty, eating food you do not taste, listening to words that wash over you without meaning. You are exhausted, not from physical exertion but from the effort of maintaining the performance. You want nothing more than to retreat to your private chambers, to be alone with your thoughts, to drop the mask of emperor, and be simply Marcus, a man trying to make sense of an incomprehensible world. But even when the official events finally end, even when you are allowed to withdraw to the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill, you cannot truly be alone. There are always attendants, always guards, always someone watching, someone waiting for orders, someone who needs something from you. Privacy is a luxury emperors rarely enjoy. Even your sleep belongs to Rome, because you might be needed at any moment if a crisis arises. You stand on a balcony overlooking the city as evening falls. From this height, Rome should be a sea of lights, as lamps are lit and fires are kindled. But tonight, there are dark patches, whole neighborhoods, that remain unlit because there is no one left alive to light the lamps. The funeral pyres burn brighter than the city they are meant to serve. The smoke rises like offerings to uncaring gods. Your wife Faustina finds you there. She hath aged in your absence, lines of worry etched into her face. She embraces you, and you hold her, grateful for this moment of genuine human connection after days of performed emotions. She does not ask about the war or the rebellion. She does not comment on the triumph. She simply holds you, and you hold her. Two people who have weathered years of separation and crisis and the slow grinding pressure of imperial duty. When she finally speaks, her words are about practical matters. The children, their education, their health. Several members of the extended imperial family have died of the plague. Friends, distant relatives, people you knew and cared about. She recites the names like a litany of loss. You listen, filing each name away in memory, adding them to the long list of the dead that you carry with you always. She tells you about the city, the reality behind the pageantry you witnessed today. The hospitals overflowing with the sick, the orphanages crowded with children whose parents have died, the grain distribution system on the verge of collapse, the crime and disorder that flourish when normal social structures break down, the cults and religions, some old and some new, that promise salvation or explanation, or at least comfort in the face of catastrophe. She tells you about the Christians, those followers of the executed Jewish prophet, whose numbers have grown alarmingly during the plague. They are not afraid of death. or at least they claim not to be. They tend to the sick, even at risk to themselves. They speak of resurrection and eternal life, of a loving God who cares about human suffering. 2 people dying by the thousands, 2 families watching their loved ones sicken and die. This message has appeal. The traditional Roman gods offer power and glory. The Christian God offers comfort and hope. You listen to all of this, absorbing the information, already beginning to think about responses and policies. But part of your mind is elsewhere, back in your tent on the Danube, writing in your notebook by candlelight. You remember writing that external things cannot disturb the soul, that the rational mind maintains tranquility regardless of circumstances. It seemed true when you wrote it, a philosophical principle worth aspiring to. But here, now, standing on this balcony, looking out over a dying city, you wonder if you were simply lying to yourself. Can the soul truly be undisturbed by the suffering of others? Can the rational mind maintain perfect tranquility while thousands die? Your philosophy teaches detachment, acceptance, focus on what is within your control. But the suffering of Rome is not external to you. You are responsible for Rome. The people dying in the streets below are your subjects, your wards, in some sense your children. A father cannot be undisturbed by his children's suffering. Perhaps you think your philosophy is inadequate, or perhaps you are inadequate to your philosophy. Perhaps a true sage, a perfect stoic, could maintain inner peace even in these circumstances. But you are not a sage. You are just a man who has tried to live according to philosophical principles, but who finds those principles tested beyond their limits by the reality of empire. Faustina senses your mood. She asks if you are well. You tell her you are tired, which is true but incomplete. You are tired, but you are also something else. Disillusioned, perhaps, or simply worn down by the weight of contradictions you can no longer reconcile. You are the emperor, the living God, the most powerful man in the world, and you are helpless to save your people from a disease you cannot see, cannot fight, cannot control. She suggests you sleep. You agree, though you know sleep will not come easily. You retire to your private chambers, the luxurious rooms that are supposed to be a retreat, a place of rest. But Ebeneder, surrounded by silk and marble and gold, you cannot escape the knowledge of what is happening outside these walls. The plague respects no boundaries. Death comes for rich and poor alike, for emperor and slave. Your privilege cannot protect you from this. Your power is meaningless before it. You lie in your bed, staring at the ceiling, and you think about all the dead, the soldiers who died in Germania fighting barbarians, the soldiers who died of plague while on campaign, the citizens of Rome dying by the thousands. Avidius Cassius killed by his own offices. All the individual lives, each one as important to itself as your life is to you, snuffed out, gone, returned to the elements from which they came. Your philosophy tells you this is natural, that death is part of the cycle of existence, that to mourn it is to misunderstand the nature of the universe. But you mourn anyway. You cannot help it. You are human, and humans grieve. Philosophy can give you a framework for understanding death, but it cannot remove the pain of loss. Perhaps it is not supposed to. Perhaps the goal is not to feel nothing, but to feel appropriately, to grieve without being destroyed by grief, to accept without becoming callous. Sleep finally comes, fitful and disturbed by dreams. You dream of the triumph, but in the dream, the people lining the streets are not cheering. They are silent, accusing, their eyes hollow with suffering. You dream of standing in the forum and looking up to find the temples crumbling, the marble cracking, the ancient buildings of Rome falling to dust around you. You wake before dawn, unrested, and you know that this is what the rest of your life will be. This exhaustion, this weight, this grinding responsibility that never ends. You rise and dress, calling for your secretary and your advisors. There is work to be done. The empire does not pause for an emperor's crisis of faith. There are reports to read, decisions to make, orders to hype. You will breakfast with senators, meeting with officials, reviewing accounts and policies, and the endless details of imperial administration. You will perform the role of emperor, wise and confident and in control. And tonight, you will write in your notebook, trying once again to reconcile the irreconcilable, to find philosophical peace in a world of suffering. This is your fate, your curse, your duty. You are Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, the philosopher king who has come home to find his kingdom dying and himself powerless to save it. But you will try anyway, because that is what you do. You will try, you will fail, you will try again. until death finally releases you from this burden, until the last of the good emperors can finally rest. Your son enters your study without knocking, as is his privilege as heir to the empire. Commodus is 19 years old now, tall and powerfully built, handsome in the way that young men are handsome when nature has been generous. He carries himself with the confidence of someone who has never doubted his worth, never questioned his place in the world. Why would he? He is the son of an emperor, born to the purple, destined from birth to rule the greatest empire the world has known. You look at him, and your heart is torn between love and despair. You love him because he is your son, because you remember him as a child, bright-eyed and curious, asking endless questions about the world. You remember teaching him to ride, reading to him from Homer and Virgil, watching him grow from a small boy into this young man. He is your flesh and blood, the continuation of your line, the future of everything you have built and protected. How can a father not love his son? But you also see, with the clear eyes that philosophy has given you, his flaws. And they are not minor flaws, not the ordinary imperfections that all humans carry. They are fundamental defects of character, cracks in the foundation that will one day bring down everything built upon them. Commodus is vain. He spends hours on his appearance, his hair, his clothes. He loves to be admired, to be the center of attention. He collects praise the way a miser collects coins, never satisfied, always hungry for more. This vanity might be forgivable in a private citizen, merely an amusing quirk. But in an emperor, it is dangerous. An emperor who craves adulation can be manipulated by flatterers, can make decisions based on how they will make him look rather than whether they are right. He is cruel. You have seen it in small ways that trouble you deeply. The way he treats slaves and servants, not with casual indifference, but with active enjoyment of their discomfort. The way he takes pleasure in the suffering of animals and men in the arena. He loves the games, loves them with a passion you find disturbing. He does not watch the gladiatorial contests with the detached interest of someone observing martial skill. He watches with bloodlust, with a hunger for violence that goes beyond normal, youthful enthusiasm for spectacle. He is lazy. He resents the hours of study you require of him, the lessons in philosophy and history and administration. He learns what he must to satisfy you, but there is no real interest, no genuine desire for knowledge. He would rather spend his time at the baths, at the games, drinking with his companions, and pursuing pleasure. You try to tell yourself that this is just youth, that he will mature, that responsibility will change him, but you do not truly believe it. Most troubling of all, he shows no real capacity for the kind of reflective thought that has sustained you through decades of impossible decisions. He does not question, he does not doubt. He believes in his own rightness with an absolute certainty that would be admirable if it were based on careful reasoning, but which is instead simply arrogance. He has been told all his life that he is special, that he is destined for greatness, and he has believed it without ever examining whether he deserves such faith. You have tried to teach him. Gods know you have tried. You have given him the same philosophical education that you received, exposure to the best teachers, the finest tech. You try a different approach. You tell him about your own education, about how your adoptive father Antoninus Pius taught you through example what it means to rule well. You speak of the sleepless nights, the difficult decisions, the weight of knowing that millions of lives depend on your judgment. You try to convey to him that being emperor is not glory and pleasure, but burden and duty. He nods, makes appropriate noises, but you can see that he is not really listening. He's thinking about something else, probably about the games he will attend this afternoon, or the party his friends are hosting tonight. You're just his father lecturing him, an obstacle to be endured until he can go do what he wants. You dismiss him, feeling older than your years. When he is gone, you sit in silence, staring at nothing, contemplating the greatest failure of your life. You have read widely in philosophy. You have fought wars and defeated rebels. You have administered an empire through plague and crisis. But you cannot reach your own son. You cannot make him into the kind of man Rome will need when you are gone. The cruel irony is that you have always known this moment would come. Roman history is filled with emperors whose children were disasters. Caligula, son of the great Germanicus. Nero, descendant of Augustus. The pattern repeats itself, generation after generation. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, especially those born to it, rather than those who must earn it. You had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that philosophy would make the difference. That if you could teach Commodus to think clearly, to question his assumptions, to strive for virtue, he might break the pattern. But philosophy cannot fix a person who does not want to be fixed. It cannot reach someone who is certain they have no need of it. The question that haunts you is whether you should name a different successor. Tradition does not demand that the empire pass to biological children. You yourself became emperor through adoption, chosen by Antoninus Pius, not because of blood but because of character. You could adopt someone else, some talented general or administrator, someone who has demonstrated wisdom and capability. You could break the chain, pass the empire to someone worthy rather than someone merely related to you. But you know you will not do this, partly because doing so would tear the empire apart. Commodus has been recognized as heir for years now. To suddenly disinherit him would create a succession crisis, would make him a rallying point for anyone dissatisfied with your rule, would potentially lead to civil war. The stability of the empire requires clear succession, and you have already established that succession. But there is another reason, more personal and less defensible. He is your son. You love him, despite everything. You cannot bring yourself to publicly declare him unworthy, to reject him so completely. It would break whatever relationship you still have with him. It would destroy him, or turn him into an enemy. And some irrational part of you still hopes that he might change. That responsibility might mature him. That when the weight of empire finally falls on his shoulders he might rise to meet it. You know this hope is almost certainly false. But you cling to it anyway, because the alternative is too painful to accept. The alternative is admitting that you have failed in the most important duty of your life, preparing a worthy successor. The alternative is knowing that when you die, you will bequeath to Rome not a philosopher king, but a monster who will undo much of what you have worked so hard to build. That evening you attend the games at the Colosseum, because your presence is expected and because Commodus particularly wants you there. He has arranged for special events, exotic beasts and condemned criminals, elaborate spectacles of death for the entertainment of the masses. The crowds cheer as you enter the imperial box, and you wave to them, playing your part. The games begin. Animals tear apart men. Men kill each other with sword and trident and net. The sand of the arena soaks up blood and is raked over, only to soak up more blood minutes later. The crowd roars its approval at each death, each display of skill or courage or desperate terror. You sit through it, maintaining an expression of polite interest. But inside you are sickened. You understand the political necessity of the games. They distract the population, provide an outlet for their violent impulses, maintain traditions that are older than the empire, but you have never enjoyed them, have never taken pleasure in watching men die for entertainment. Commodus, sitting beside you, is enraptured. He leans forward in his seat, shouting encouragement to the fighters, groaning when someone dies too quickly, cheering when the violence is particularly spectacular. His eyes shine with excitement. His whole body is engaged with what he is watching. This, you realize with horror, is when he is truly alive, not when studying philosophy, not when learning governance, but here, watching blood flow in the arena. You look at your son, this young man who will one day rule the empire, and you see the future of Rome, and it terrifies you. What will he do with unlimited power? How will he use the legions, the treasury, the vast apparatus of imperial government? Will he be content to simply indulge his pleasures, or will his cruelty expand to match his authority? How many will suffer, how many will die, because you failed to make him into something better? These questions have no answers, not yet, but you know that one day, historians will ask them. One day, someone will write about Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, and they will have to explain how such a man left the empire to someone like Commodus. They will wonder if you were blind, or weak, or simply unlucky. They will debate whether you could have done something different, whether this tragedy could have been averted. You will not be there to answer them. You will be dead, beyond blame and beyond pain, but your legacy will be stained by what comes after. The good you have done, the wars you have won, the crises you have navigated, will all be overshadowed by the disaster of your succession. This is the final irony of your philosophical life. You have spent decades trying to be virtuous, trying to rule wisely, trying to live according to reason and duty. And your greatest act, the one that will define your legacy more than all the others, is the one over which you seem to have the least control. The character of your son. The games continue. The crowd roars. Commodus laughs at something particularly violent, and you sit in your seat, Emperor of Rome, surrounded by thousands of people but utterly alone, contemplating the ruin that will come when you are no longer here to hold it back. This is your failure. This is your tragedy, and there is nothing you can do to change it. You can only watch and wait and hope against hope that you are wrong about what the future holds. 2 years have passed since your return to Rome. 2 years of you spend your final weeks in Rome, attending to administrative matters, ensuring that the city and the western provinces will function smoothly in your absence. You appoint reliable men to positions of authority. You issue instructions and guidelines. You try to prepare for every contingency, though you know from experience that the unexpected always finds a way to intrude. The most difficult part is the farewells. You gather your family, knowing that some of them you may never see again. Your wife Faustina is in poor health herself, weakened by years of stress and the lingering effects of a bout of the plague she barely survived. You hold her and speak words of comfort that feel hollow even as you utter them. You promise to return, but you both know that such promises are meaningless in the face of war and disease and the simple fragility of life. Your children are assembled, some still young, others approaching adulthood. You look at each face, trying to memorize features, storing away memories against the possibility that these are the last moments you will share. You give each of them advice, guidance, expressions of your love. You'll try to be strong for them, to project confidence that this separation is temporary. But your voice catches, and you see fear in their eyes, the knowledge that their father may not return. Commodus will accompany you to the frontier. This is partly by necessity as heir. He must gain military experience, must be seen by the legions, must learn command, but it is also a final attempt, perhaps futile, to shape his character. You hope that exposure to the realities of war, to the hardships and responsibilities of command, might mature him in ways that your teaching has failed to do. You hope that facing death might give him perspective on life. You hope for many things that you do not truly believe will come to pass. The journey north is slower than your first campaign, accommodating your reduced physical capacity. You ride in a covered carriage more often than on horseback, a concession to age that you resent but cannot avoid. The jolting of the carriage over rough roads aggravates your stomach, but it is preferable to the agony your back would endure from long hours in the saddle. Commodus rides with the cavalry when he can, showing off his horsemanship, his physical prowess. He is in his element here, enjoying the martial atmosphere, the admiration of soldiers. You watch him from your carriage and try to see these qualities as positive. He is brave, at least in the physical sense. He does not fear battle or danger. Perhaps this courage can be channeled into something worthwhile. But you also see how he treats the common soldiers when he thinks you are not watching. The casual cruelty, the contempt for those he considers beneath him. You see how he surrounds himself with flatterers and yes-men, how he dismisses anyone who offers criticism or contrary opinions. You see the same patterns that troubled you in Rome, now transplanted to a military setting. And you despair. The frontier, when you finally reach it, after weeks of travel, as much as you remember it, the same damp cold, the same smell of wood smoke and mud, the same atmosphere of grinding tension. But it is also worse. The fortifications show signs of hard use and insufficient maintenance. The soldiers look weary, stretched thin by years of constant vigilance. The local populations in the border provinces are terrified, having endured raids and attacks that have destroyed villages and killed thousands. You establish your headquarters in a fortress overlooking the Danube. It is a substantial structure, built to last, but it is still fundamentally a military installation. Cold stone walls, narrow windows, sparse furnishings. You have a private chamber, larger and better appointed than an ordinary officer's quarters. But it is nothing like the palaces of Rome. You unpack your few personal possessions, including your notebook, now nearly full with years of philosophical reflections. You add it to a collection of similar notebooks, a growing record of your thoughts and struggles. The military situation requires immediate attention. You spend long days in conference with your generals, reviewing intelligence reports, examining maps, planning strategy. The Germanic tribes are more organized than they were during your previous campaigns. They have learned from their defeats, adapted their tactics. They avoid direct confrontation with Roman legions, preferring ambushes and raids. They exploit the vastness of their forests, terrain where Roman discipline and organization matter less. You develop a strategy of fortification and controlled aggression. You order the strengthening of existing forts and the construction of new ones, creating a network of strong points that can support each other. You organize mobile strike forces to respond quickly to incursions. You attempt to divide the Germanic tribes through diplomacy, offering favorable terms to some in exchange for their neutrality or even their assistance against others. It is the same blend of military force and political maneuvering that has characterized your entire reign. But everything is harder now. Your body fails you at crucial moments. You are in the middle of a briefing when a wave of pain from your stomach doubles you over. You hide it as best you can, but your officers see. Word spreads through the camp. The emperor is ill. The emperor is dying. You must issue public statements, denying these rumors, must force yourself to appear in public more than you would like, must demonstrate vitality you do not feel. The winter closes in, and with it comes a level of cold you had forgotten was possible. Even with braziers burning constantly, even wrapped in furs and blankets, you cannot get warm. The cold has settled into your bones, and no external heat seems able to drive it out. You develop a cough, deep and persistent, that exhausts you and keeps you awake at night. Your physicians prescribe various treatments, none of which help. You suspect you know what this cough means, but you do not speak your suspicion aloud. Despite your physical decline, you maintain your routine of writing. Every night, by the light of oil lamps, you add to your meditations. Your handwriting is shakier now, the letters less precise, but the thoughts flow as they always have. You write about death, about accepting it as natural, about not fearing the inevitable. You write about duty, about serving Rome to the last breath. You write about the nature of the universe, about the divine logos that orders all things, about the interconnectedness of all existence. But you also write, more frequently now, about weariness, about the desire for rest, about the hope that your burdens will soon be lifted. Your philosophy has always emphasized acceptance of fate, but now that philosophy acquires a new urgency. You are not. But then you see him in the aftermath of a successful skirmish against a Germanic raiding party. The prisoners are brought before him, barbarian warriors who fought bravely, but were overwhelmed by Roman numbers and discipline. Commodus ordered their execution, which is within his rights as a Roman commander. But he does not order a quick military execution. He orders them to be tormented first, to be made an example, to suffer before they die. You countermand his order immediately, directing that the prisoners be executed quickly and without unnecessary cruelty. Commodus is furious with you, humiliated in front of his men. That night, he confronts you in your quarters, demanding to know why you undermine his authority, why you treat him like a child rather than a commander. You try to explain about mercy, about the proper conduct of a Roman officer, about the difference between necessary violence and sadistic cruelty. You try to tell him that strength does not require brutality, that a truly powerful man can afford to be merciful. But he does not understand. To him, mercy is weakness. Cruelty is strength. The ability to inflict suffering without remorse is proof of power. You send him away, and you realize, with final, absolute certainty, that you have failed. Your son is beyond your reach. Whatever man he will become has already been formed, and your influence has been insufficient to shape him into something worthy of the power he will inherit. This is your tragedy, and it is Rome's tragedy. In your final months, when you should be taking comfort in your legacy, you are instead haunted by the knowledge of what that legacy will become after you are gone. The winter deepens, your cough worsens. You eat less and less, your stomach unable to tolerate even simple foods. You grow thin, the flesh seeming to melt away from your bones. Your physicians look at you with the professional sympathy of men who know they are watching someone die. But you do not speak of it. You continue to work, to command, to fulfill your duties, because that is what you do. That is all you can do, until the end. The night is deep and cold, and you are alone with your thoughts, and your lamp, and your notebook. Outside your chamber, the fortress is quiet except for the sounds of sentries changing guard, and the eternal wind that howls down from the mountains. Inside, you sit wrapped in blankets and furs, still shivering, trying to keep your hands steady enough to write. This is the 11th notebook you have filled over the years. 11 volumes of your private thoughts, your philosophical reflections, your attempts to make sense of your life and your duties. You have never written these words for public consumption. They are your conversation with yourself, your way of clarifying your thinking, your tool for maintaining your sanity in an insane world. But tonight, as you write, you are conscious that these may be your final words, that what you set down now may be your last attempt to distill everything you have learned, everything you believe, into something that might have value beyond your own immediate need. You write slowly, pausing often to gather your thoughts or to wait for a spasm of coughing to pass. Your handwriting is shakier than you would like, but it is still legible. That is what matters. Clarity matters. Truth matters. Getting the thoughts down before they are lost matters. You write, of the life of man, the duration is but a point, the substance fleeting, perception deemed the composition of the body, subject to easy corruption, the soul a spinning top, fortune hard to make out, fame uncertain. To put it briefly, the things of the body stream away like a river, the things of the soul are dreams and delusions. Life is warfare and a sojourn in a strange land. Lasting reputation is oblivion. These are dark words. the words of a man who has seen too much, suffered too much, borne too much. But they are also true words, or at least they feel true to you in this moment. You have had everything the world can offer: supreme power, vast wealth, the adulation of millions, and you have found it all to be fundamentally empty. The things people strive for, the things they believe will bring them happiness, are shadows and illusions. Real value lies elsewhere, in places most people never think to look. You continue. What then can guide us through this life? One thing, and one thing only: philosophy. And philosophy consists in this: to keep the inner spirit free from violence and harm, master of pleasures and pains, doing nothing without purpose or falsely, or with hypocrisy, independent of whether another acts or fails to act, and further, accepting what happens and what is allotted as coming from the same source from which we ourselves came. This has been your guiding principle for decades. This is what has sustained you through wars and plagues and betrayals and all the countless difficulties of imperial rule. Keep the inner spirit free. Maintain your philosophical integrity regardless of external circumstances. Accept what comes because it is part of the natural order, part of the same cosmic process that brought you into being. Do not rage against fate. Do not be disturbed by things beyond your control. Focus on maintaining your own virtue, your own rational judgment, your own proper relationship with the universe. It sounds simple when you write it, but you know from painful experience how difficult it is to actually live this way. How many times have you failed to maintain that inner tranquility? How often have you been disturbed by external events, angry at betrayals, grieved by losses? You are not a perfect Stoic sage. You are just a man trying, and often failing, to live up to philosophical ideals. But perhaps you think the trying is what matters. Perhaps the goal is not perfection, but effort. Perhaps the value lies in the struggle itself, in the daily practice of attempting to be better than you were yesterday. You have not achieved the perfect philosophical life, but you have tried. You have tried every day for decades, and that effort, however imperfect, has given your life meaning. You write about death, because death is very much on your mind tonight. You write, "Do not despise death, but be content with it, since this too is one of those things which nature wills. For such as it is to be young and to grow old and to increase and reach maturity and to have teeth and beard and grey hairs, and to beget and to be pregnant, and to bring forth in all the other natural operations which the seasons of life bring." You write about living in the present moment, about not wasting mental energy on past regrets or future anxieties. You write, "Do not disturb yourself by thoughts of your whole life. Do not dwell on all the various troubles which may have occurred or may occur, but in each present moment, ask yourself, what is there in this that is unbearable and beyond endurance? Remember that it is not the future or the past that weighs upon you, but only the present, and this becomes small if you isolate it and accuse your mind if it cannot stand up to something so small. This has been one of your most useful philosophical practices. When overwhelmed by the magnitude of your responsibilities, you have learned to narrow your focus to the immediate moment, the immediate task. You cannot solve all the empire's problems at once. You cannot undo the past or control the future, but you can act rightly in this present moment. You can make the best decision available to you with the information you have. And then, in the next moment, you can do the same again. Life becomes manageable when you break it down into a series of present moments, each one addressable, each one survivable. You write about the proper attitude toward other people, even those who wrong you. You write, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and I have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood or birth, but of the same mind and possessing a share of the divine, and so none of them can hurt me." This has been perhaps your most difficult philosophical practice, to maintain goodwill toward people who betray you, oppose you, disappoint you, to recognize that their failings come from ignorance rather than malice, to understand that they are your brothers and sisters in rationality, even when they act irrationally. You have not always succeeded in this. You have felt anger, resentment, the desire for revenge, but you have tried, consistently tried, to see others with philosophical compassion, to judge their actions without condemning their essential nature. You write about your son, though you do not name him. You write, "If someone is mistaken, instruct him kindly and show him his error. But if you are not able to do so, blame yourself, or not even yourself." This is your admission of failure, carefully disguised in general principles. You could not instruct Commodus kindly enough, clearly enough, convincingly enough, he remains mistaken, and you have not been able to show him his error. You must either blame yourself for this failure or accept that some things are beyond your control. Your philosophy tells you to choose acceptance, but your heart chooses blame. The lamp burns low, your hand cramps from writing, your cough has returned, and you must pause frequently to hack into a cloth that comes away flecked with blood. You know what this means. You know that your time is measured in weeks, now, perhaps days. But you are not finished writing. You have more to say, more truths to capture before they are lost. You write? Think continually how many physicians have died after furrowing their brows over their patients. How many astrologers after predicting with great pretensions the deaths of others. How many philosophers after endless discourses on death or immortality. How many heroes after killing thousands. How many tyrants after using their power over men's lives with terrible insolence, as though they were themselves immortal. Think too of whole cities, which have perished entirely, Hellas and Pompeii, and Herculaneum, and others, without number. Run over too in your mind all those you have known yourself, one after another. One man laid out another for burial, and then he himself was laid out, and all in a short time. In sum, always observe how ephemeral and worthless human things are, and what was yesterday, a little seed tomorrow, will be a mummy or ashes. This is your final meditation on mortality and the vanity of human ambitions. Everyone dies, everything ends. The powerful and the weak, the famous and the obscure, the virtuous and the wicked all return to dust. Cities crumble, empires fall, nothing human endures. This is not meant to be depressing. It is meant to be liberating. Since nothing external endures, do not place your hopes in external things. Since death comes to all, do not fear it or try to avoid it. Since fame and glory are ephemeral, do not seek them. Instead, focus on living well in each moment, on maintaining virtue, on fulfilling your duty with integrity. You set down your pen, too exhausted to continue. You have written what needed to be written. These words, like all the words in your notebooks, may never be read by anyone else. They may be burned after your death, or lost, or simply forgotten. But that does not matter. You did not write them for posterity. You wrote them for yourself, to clarify your own thinking, to maintain your own sanity, to remind yourself of philosophical truths that are easy to forget in the press of daily duties. You close the notebook and set it aside. You extinguish the lamp, and darkness fills your chamber. Outside, the wind continues to howl. The guards continue their rounds. The empire continues its endless, inexorable, grinding forward through time. And you lie in your bed, wrapped in your blankets, coughing occasionally, feeling the weakness in your body, knowing that soon you will be part of that universal return to elements that you have written about so often. You are not afraid. You are tired. Yes, you are sad to be leaving before your work is finished. But you are not afraid. You have lived according to your philosophy as best you could. You have tried to be a good emperor, a good man, a good philosopher. You have failed in some ways, succeeded in others. But you have tried, and in tring, you have lived a life that, whatever its flaws and failures, has had meaning and purpose. Tomorrow, if there is a tomorrow, you will rise and do your duty again. You will command your legions, administer your empire, try once more to reach your sun. You will continue until you can continue no more. Because that is what you do. That is who you are. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, philosopher and servant, doing his duty until the end. The fever comes on suddenly, or perhaps it has been building for days and you simply did not notice. Time has become uncertain, elastic. Have given him that you hope he will be happy, that he will find some measure of peace in the difficult life that lies ahead of him. You tell him that the meditations, the notebooks filled with your private thoughts, are his now. You do not know if he will read them. You suspect he will not, or if he will not understand them. But they are yours to give and his to receive. A final attempt to share the philosophy that has sustained you through everything. Commodus is weeping openly now, promising to be the emperor you wanted him to be, to honor your memory, to make you proud. You want to believe him. You want to think that this moment of genuine emotion might transform him, that grief might accomplish what teaching could not. But you know, with the clarity that approaching death brings, that it will not. He will make these promises in good faith, and within weeks or months he will have forgotten them, swept up in the intoxication of absolute power and his own appetites. This is your failure and your tragedy. Batitis also, you realize in this final moment of clarity, not entirely your responsibility. You did what you could, you gave him the best education, the best examples, the best guidance you were capable of providing. That it was not enough is not a judgment on you. Some people cannot be reached, cannot be changed, no matter how much love and wisdom is offered to them. You must forgive yourself for this failure, just as your philosophy has always counseled forgiveness for the failures of others. You have one more thing to say, a final philosophical statement, a summary of everything you have learned and believed. You gather your strength, and you whisper, "Go to the rising sun, for I am already setting." It is a line from a play, something you saw in your youth, and it seems appropriate now. Commodus is the future, the rising sun. You are the past, the setting sun, your light fading into darkness. This is natural, TC's right. The old must give way to the new. The father must die so the son can take his place. But there is more you want to say. One final thought that seems important. You manage a few more words. Think not of what is absent, but of what you have. Be not concerned with the length of life, but with its quality. Or perhaps you only think these words without speaking them. It is hard to tell. The boundary between thought and speech, between internal and external, has become blurred. Commodus's face is swimming before you, fading in and out of focus. Behind him you see other faces, or perhaps you are imagining them. Your wife Faustina, though she is in Rome, hundreds of miles away. Your other children, your teachers and mentors from your youth. The phantom army of everyone you have known and loved, gathered to witness your passage from this life into whatever comes next. The pain in your body is fading, which you know is not a good sign. You are not getting better. You are simply moving beyond pain, into that final stage where the body begins to shut down. Your breathing is shallow and irregular. Your heartbeat, which you can feel as a faint flutter in your chest, is erratic and weak. You are dying, and you know it, and you are not afraid. Your philosophy has prepared you for this moment. Death is natural. Death is nothing to fear. Death is simply the dissolution of the elements that temporarily combined to form Marcus Aurelius. Those elements returning to the universal substance to be reformed into new configurations. You are not being destroyed. You are merely changing, transforming, returning to the source from which you came. But there is also, beneath the philosophical acceptance, a simple human sadness. You are leaving. You will not see tomorrow's sunrise. You will not walk in gardens or read books or have conversations with friends. You will not taste wine or feel the warmth of sun on your face or hear music or watch the stars wheel across the night sky. All the simple pleasures of being alive, pleasures you perhaps did not appreciate enough when you had them, are ending, and Rome will go on without you. The empire will continue, for better or worse, under Commodus's rule. The legions will fight their battles. The citizens will live their lives. The great machinery of state will grind forward. You will be mourned. Certainly. You will be deified, turned into another god in the Roman pantheon, your cult established and maintained by state priests. But the actual man, the Marcus Aurelius who struggled and doubted and wrote in his notebooks by lamplight, will be forgotten. Only the legend will remain, simplified and sanitized and stripped of all the complexity and contradiction that made you human. Perhaps that is as it should be. Perhaps legends are what empires need, not complicated truths. Perhaps your life, with all its failures and compromises and unanswered questions, will be transformed into something more useful after you are gone. The philosopher emperor, the last of the good emperors, the wise ruler who embodied stoic virtue. The reality was messier, more ambiguous, more human. But the legend will be what endures. Your vision is narrowing, darkness creeping in from the edges. Commodus is still holding your hand, still speaking, but you can no longer make out his words. The sounds of the room, the voices of physicians and servants, are fading away. You are retreating inward, into some quiet place, beyond sensation, beyond thought, beyond self. In this final moment, you think of the question that has haunted you your entire reign. Did you do enough? Were you a good emperor? Did you serve Rome faithfully? Did your philosophical principles make you better or simply more conflicted? You do not know. You cannot know. History will judge, and history is written by those who come after, who do not understand the impossible choices you faced, who cannot feel the weight you carried. But perhaps that is the wrong question. Perhaps the right question is not whether you succeeded, but whether you tried. And you did try, every day. For decades. You tried to be virtuous, to be just, to be wise, to fulfill your duties with integrity. You failed often. You made mistakes. You could not save your empire from plague, or your son from his own nature. But you tried. You never stopped trying. And in the end, Perhaps that is all that can be asked of any human being, even an emperor. The darkness is almost complete now. The room, the people, the world itself are fading away. You feel yourself letting go, releasing your grip on life, on consciousness, on the burden of being Marcus Aurelius. It is not frightening. It is almost a relief. The long struggle is ending. The weight is being lifted. You can finally rest. Your last thought is not a grand philosophical statement. It is not about empire or duty or the nature of the cosmos. It is something simpler, more intimate. You think of a spring day in your childhood, running through gardens with your brother. Your mother's laugh. The cremation is held with all the ancient rites. Your body is placed on an enormous funeral pyre, surrounded by precious woods and expensive incense. Commodus performs the ritual of lighting the fire, and as the flames rise, an eagle is released to carry your soul to the heavens. The symbolism is clear. Marcus Aurelius ascends to join the gods. You are deified, made divine. You're called to establish alongside those of Augustus and the other great emperors who came before you. Your ashes are placed in the mausoleum of Hadrian, the great tomb that houses Rome's imperial dead. You join your predecessors in that darkness, the mortal remains of a man who ruled the world. A statue is erected in your honor, showing you not as you really were, aging, sick, troubled, but as you were supposed to be, strong, wise, eternal. This statue will outlast the empire itself, surviving into ages you could never imagine, a testament to a man and a civilization long since turned to dust. The empire continues, as you knew it would. Commodus rules, and at first, he rules adequately. He maintains your policies, keeps your advisors, follows the path you laid out for him. There is hope, briefly, that he might have learned something after all, that your death might have sobered him, matured him into a worthy emperor. But gradually, inevitably, his true nature emerges. He tires of the burden of administration, of the endless meetings and decisions that empire demands. He begins to delegate more and more to favorites and freedmen, men who tell him what he wants to hear rather than what he needs to know. He spends more time at the games, eventually even participating in the arena himself, fighting as a gladiator, degrading the imperial dignity in ways that shock and horrify the Senate. He becomes paranoid, seeing plots everywhere, executing senators on flimsy pretexts. He demands to be worshipped as the reincarnation of Hercules. He renames Rome itself, calling it Colonia Commodiana, the colony of Commodus. He becomes, in short, everything you feared he would become, everything you tried to prevent him from becoming. Your greatest fear is realized. Your son, your heir, the man you gave the empire to, becomes a tyrant. But you are not there to see it. You are beyond pain, beyond grief, beyond responsibility. You are dead, at peace. Whatever that means in the grand scheme of the cosmos. The mistakes of the living are no longer yours to fix. Your duty is finished. Your service is ended. You have given all you could give, and now it is time for others to carry the burden. History will remember you as the last of the 5 good emperors, the final bright moment before Rome's long decline. Your reign will be seen as a golden age, a time when wisdom and virtue sat upon the throne. Your meditations, those private notebooks never meant for publication, will survive and be published and read for thousands of years. Generations yet unborn will study your words, seeking guidance from the philosopher emperor who tried to live according to principle in an unprincipled world. They will admire you. They will quote you. They will hold you up as an example of how power should be wielded, of how philosophy can be lived rather than merely discussed. But they will not know the full truth of your struggles. They will not understand how hard it was to be what you tried to be, how many times you failed, how much you sacrificed for a duty you never asked for but could not refuse. And perhaps that is right. Perhaps the legend is more useful than the reality. Perhaps the world needs the image of Marcus Aurelius, the perfect philosopher-emperor, more than it needs the truth of Marcus, the man who doubted and suffered and did his best in impossible circumstances. The image inspires, the truth complicates, and Rome, even dying Rome, needs inspiration more than complication. You would not have chosen this legacy. You would have preferred to be forgotten, to be allowed to simply disappear into the vastness of time like countless other men who have lived and died and left no mark. But that choice was not yours to make. You were born to power and purpose. You lived in service to both. And now, in death, you serve still, a symbol, an example, an inspiration to those who come after. This is what it means to be emperor. Not just to rule while you live, but to serve as symbol after you die. Not just to make decisions in the present, but to cast a shadow over the future. You gave your life to Rome, and Rome will take even your death, will transform it and use it and make it part of the eternal story the empire tells itself about its glory and destiny. The Danube frontier, where you died, remains contested for decades after your death. The tribes you fought press harder against Rome's borders. Commodus, uninterested in military campaigns, makes peace on disadvantageous terms, trading territory for temporary quiet. Much of what you fought for, the land you held, the borders you defended, is lost within a generation. Your military victories prove temporary, another reminder that nothing human endures. The plague eventually burns itself out. As plague is dough, the empire recovers its population slowly over decades and generations. Life returns to something approaching normal. But Rome is never quite the same. The crisis of your reign, plague, war, economic disruption, the emergence of Christianity and other Eastern religions marks a turning point. The Pax Romana, already fraying, begins to unravel more quickly. The age of expansion is over. The age of defense, of managed decline, of fighting to hold what cannot ultimately be held, has begun. You would have understood this. You already saw it happening in your lifetime. You wrote about the impermanence of empire, about how all human institutions eventually crumble. You knew Rome would not last forever, that the eternal city is not actually eternal. But you also knew that this understanding does not absolve one from duty. You still had to fight the wars, make the decisions, carry the burden, even knowing that everything you built would one day fall. This is perhaps your greatest legacy, though not the one most celebrated. You showed that it is possible to serve with integrity even when service seems futile. That duty remains duty even when the cause is probably lost. That one can act virtuously, even while understanding the ultimate meaninglessness of all action. You are a tragic figure, but a noble one. You bore your burden without complaint, did your duty without hope of ultimate success, maintained your principles even when they seemed to bring you nothing but suffering. And now your story is complete. From birth to death, from childhood to empire, from the hopes of youth to the disillusionment of age, you lived fully, suffered deeply, thought profoundly. You were not perfect. You made mistakes. You failed in some of your most important goals. But you tried. You never stopped trying. And in trying, you achieved a kind of greatness that has nothing to do with military victories or territorial expansion or any of the usual measures of imperial success. You showed what it means to be human in the face of overwhelming responsibility. You demonstrated that philosophy is not just for garden schools and lecture halls, but for the real world of difficult choices and impossible burdens. You proved that power and virtue are not incompatible, even if they are not easily reconciled. You lived the examined life that Socrates spoke of, and you found it hard and painful and worthwhile. This was your life as Roman emperor, not the glory and luxury that people imagine when they think of imperial power, not the simple narrative of triumph and conquest, but something more complex, more human, more true. A life of service and struggle, a life of philosophical principles tested by brutal realities, a life of trying to be good in a world that makes goodness difficult, a life of duty performed without reward or respite until death finally brought release. You are Marcus Aurelius. You were an emperor of Rome. You were a philosopher who had to be a warrior. You were a man who sought peace and found only war. You were a father who could not save his son. You were a ruler who could not save his empire. You were human, flawed, mortal, and in your humanity and mortality, you were great. Your story ends here, on the Danube frontier, in a cold room, in a military fort, with your hand in your son's hand and your thoughts turning to the eternal. But your words survive. Your example survives. And somewhere, in the endless future you will never see, people will read your meditations and find in them comfort and guidance. They will look back across the centuries and see you, the philosopher emperor, struggling with the same questions they struggle with, facing the same uncertainties, seeking the same truths. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is all any of us can hope for. To live with integrity, to think clearly, to act justly, and to leave behind some small testament to the struggle. You did these things. You were not perfect, but you were good. You did not save Rome, but you served it faithfully. You did not find all the answers, but you asked the right questions. Rest now, Marcus Aurelius. Your duty is done. Your burden is lifted. The emperor at war has finally found peace. And Rome, the eternal city, marches on into the future without you, carrying forward the light you tried to keep burning in the darkness. Your story is over, but the questions you wrestled with, the principles you tried to live by, the example you set, these endure. These are the true monuments of your reign, more lasting than marble, more precious than gold. This was your life. This was your service. This was what it was really like to be a Roman emperor. Not in the glory, but in the struggle. Not in the triumph, but in the trying. Not in the success, but in the attempt. You lived, you fought, you thought, you suffered, you endured. And now, finally, you rest. The philosopher emperor, the last of the good emperors, has passed into history. But the man beneath the title, the man who rode by lamplight and doubted and struggled and kept faith with his principles even when they brought him no comfort, that man deserves to be remembered. That man, Marcus Aurelius, servant of Rome, deserves his rest. Your journey is complete. Sleep now, Philo. Your long ordeal is over. And somewhere, in the turning of the cosmos you wrote about so often, your elements return to their source, ready to be reformed into new combinations, new lives, new struggles. The universe continues, time flows on. And you, having played your part, having lived your life, having borne your burden, can finally let go and become part of the eternal cycle you spent your life trying to understand and accept. This was what your life was really like as a Roman emperor. This was Marcus Aurelius. This was the truth beneath the legend. This was the man behind the statue. And now, his story told, his words preserved, his example recorded for future generations to ponder, he takes his place in history. Not as a god, though Rome made him one. Not as a legend, though that is how he is remembered. But as a man, flawed, struggling, trying, human, and in that humanity, truly great.